Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Just a little pre-introduction. So this video is going to get into in-depth coverage of both the Trump deception and the Biden deception. There's breaking news in both cases, and an epic comment I want to get to in terms of the Trumpers and all of those things, right? And so there's going to be an extended part of this video. This is why I'm making the introduction, which is going to be like an hour and a half long compilation I put together on Joe Biden that I'm just going to slap on the end of this thing. For people who didn't see it, it's in a video that I covered 2 days ago. But it's going to get into the whole Biden, dementia stuff. And, even with an hour and a half, not everything is there. But if you've already seen the video 2 days ago, then you don't, it's just a repeat of that. So the video isn't actually as long as it's probably going to be 3.5 hours. But it's not that long. It's about 2 hours. And it's extensive sort of, bombshell sort of moment of truth type stuff. So let's get into it here. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Today is Tuesday, possibly the 20th. Let me check my phone. 20th. Hopefully I'll get a chicken update. My chicks, some of them got predatored, but we have some left. I'll talk about that. Hopefully this video. If not, I'll do it next video. So a few things to get to. Netanyahu's turned on Trump. Again, a great Trumper comment. Of course, the Moody's is downgraded America, and Trump is flaming out over Walmart and these things. I got this thing with Joe Biden to start off with. Morning Joe turned on Joe Biden. Which is, Morning Joe, like the lack of loyalty. When you, well, we'll get into that in a second. And I have an amazing comment from a Trumper, which is the best. Where I'm really looking forward to all the things. Like this is a big Tuesday. And so after the Joe Biden stuff, and I got a little bit more on the Joe Biden, whatever it is. But let's start here with this. We'll do a little bit of Joe Biden prostate debacle, which is such a, which I covered in my last video. And I was asking the question, is anybody going to call BS on an obvious BS thing, right? There's no way the guy didn't have it. So it's Morning Joe of all people. And this happened before I made the video. It was already going on. And I didn't know Morning Joe was the only one that was going to do it. Maybe some other people, I'm sure on Fox. But Morning Joe here.
You believe it is likely, if this prostate cancer has spread to the bone, that he could have had it for up to a decade, but certainly it's likely. Would it be fair to say it's likely to?
Yes, a decade. Based on everything that we now know about prostate cancer and the kind he has and the fact that it went, whatever they call that, it metastasized. And then it went into his bones, that they were treating it. They knew about it, were treating it. So it wasn't like, if it goes untreated, sure, but, just that wouldn't have happened. And he probably would prevent him from running for president in 2016, right? So he's probably got the prostate cancer. He's got Parkinson's. He's got probably early stage Parkinson's and prostate cancer. And the prostate cancer they are treating it with hormones. And so, which we now know, which means and what they're trying to do is get all the testosterone out of its body, which opens up your body, your immune system. And so he's probably on a number of medications, which also would add to the clouding of his judgment, right? So that's the story. I mean, that's, we now know that they were hiding a bunch of shit more than
To have had this for at least several years.
Oh, more than several years. You don't get prostate cancer.
Again, I just want to stop you. So this is not speculation. If you have prostate cancer that is spread to the bone, then he's most certainly, you are saying, had it when he was president of the United States.
Oh, yeah. He did not develop it in the last 100, 200 days. He had it while he was president. He probably had it at the start of his presidency in 2021. Yes, that I don't think there's any disagreement about that.
And I'm just curious again, if your doctor to a president of the United States that is a male, that is an older man, would a prostate test, and again, we're just talking about a PSA screening, a blood test that you could do along with all the other blood tests. It's not even that it would be.
Okay, so let's talk about the significance of this. Morning Joe slathered all over Joe Biden more than anything any other person, even the Hammer guy. They thought they would talk about Joe Biden like he was the best president ever. They talk about Joe Biden the way Trumpers talk about Trump. And they, Joe Biden would call them for like advice and stuff. And he spent like hours with him at the White House, both of them. And he would go on interviews like Joe Biden. This was Joe Biden's #1 show. They were the #1 supporters of him. It was disgusting how much they slathered all over him. I talked about this when they finally turned on him. When they were getting him out. And remember, first they, and again, I mean, they're in a way doing the right thing, but then they went and met with Trump in Mar-a-Lago. And they slammed Trump in more ways than, even the Hammer guy. MSNBC has the Hammer guy who is the most Trump hater out there. But they were the worst. They were the most pro-Joe Biden and worst on Trump. And they are like the whole panel here of these people. These are prominent people, and one of those guys is, forget his name, the guy up in the right-hand corner is I think he's the Boston. He writes for one of those Boston papers, and then this English woman in the middle below. She had whatever. Like I would know their names if I just heard them. Mike Barnacle is the guy's name, I think. I don't know what the woman's name is. But, like, they're all here, like, a day after. So this is Monday morning, just yesterday. And no one else is doing this, like, at least as far as I saw. Even CNN. And CNN was, like, Jake Tapper just wrote a book on him. And I don't know what Jake Tapper said. I didn't go search out his show. But this one, they're going right after him. Because there's no way he didn't have fucking prostate cancer when he was president. Like, it didn't happen. They knew it probably immediately. They test all the time for it. They run tests like, where a normal older guy would get a finger up his ass and the doctor would feel your prostate or whatever it is, right? Where they probably were running other types of tests to see if he had cancers, right? They get more screenings, whatever they have in terms of their, medical exams is far more, intense and more whatever it is, more cutting edge than what the normal person gets, especially if he's president. But before that, and so Joe Biden was eyeing the White House while he was vice president because he wanted to be president. He ran 3 times already. His best chance to win the White House was in 2016 and continue the Obama administration. Again, Hillary Clinton was never really an Obama person. She lost to Obama when she had her best chance to be president. Obama came out of nowhere and took her spot, which she was probably pretty pissed about. But he put her in as Secretary of State. And both her and Joe Biden were wanting to run in 2016. And Joe Biden, like, he was ousted. I showed you that in my last video, my 2 videos ago, that CNN did a hit piece on him. They were all making fun of him, and they were pushing Hillary, who has, again, she passed out like 6 times, and then another 2 times when she was running for president. She, like, remember she had to be helped into her car? She passed out one time and got like a black eye or a broken jaw or something, broken arm. Like, I mean, I had all, like, she was a drunk, but she might have had something else going on. Like, people who faint just normally. She's fainted 7 times that we know about. Like, in public, things that, were reported. And they thought she was better candidate than Joe Biden. So he had health issues and whatever else was going on with him. And so she loses. Trump is president, and Joe Biden's just out of the picture. And then 2019, they're like talking about him running. Like, where's that coming from? And he shows up and he's senile. Like, I was like, oh my God, this guy's fucking gone. Right? And so that all happened. And so there were things going on. Now, the Parkinson's, now we had that doctor that said, this is another guy saying the same thing about the prostate cancer. That this, that doctors who deal with this know that this wasn't there. That wasn't, that wasn't just, oh, we missed it. I mean, they didn't miss it, right? And so they were treating him for prostate cancer while he was president, giving him hormones and taking away his nuts. Like, he has no testosterone because that was the treatment. They're saying now he's responsive to hormone treatment. And so, they probably think he's going to die soon. And if he dies of prostate cancer with bone cancer in it, they're going to be like, holy shit, this guy had cancer forever. So, and it gives him some sympathy or whatever it is, what he's getting, tagged in the media right now for those tapes that were released. But holy shit, right?
If your doctor to a president of the United States that is a male, that is an older man, would a prostate test, and again, we're just talking about a PSA screening, a blood test that you could do along with all the other blood tests. It's not even that it would be intrusive. Would this not be one of the first tests that you would conduct as a White House doctor?
If you're a White House doctor in this situation, I think you would certainly discuss it with the president and talk about the pros and cons. I think if you then ask, well, if President Biden says, well, if I'm your father, which patients often do, what would you recommend? I think the fact is that most White House doctors would recommend getting the test. And again, the evidence is, look at President Obama, President Bush, younger than President Biden.
So most of you probably aware of the advantages of getting blood work. I went to an alternative chiropractor, whatever they call it, alternative health, holistic chiropractor. And they were able to draw blood and send it off to some labs after I had COVID, and was really helpful. And then I went and got blood tests again to sort of like figure out where I was. And most of you guys know how that works. And it's one of the easiest things. Like, it's not invasive. You don't have a finger up your ass, right? Or, it's not something where you're getting irradiated like an MRI or something, or x-rays. So getting blood tests, hair analysis, and these things have to be done regularly for presidents. And certainly prostate, if they can do prostate work through blood tests, which this guy's saying, that would indicate whether he has, they can tell if there's cancer, in the thyroid cancer, prostate cancer, then, that would all be a good thing, right? That would be a very positive thing. And so, they're just calling out now bullshit here because he totally had that done. So they totally knew. And so it wasn't like something was happening and they were unaware of it because it was asymptomatic, because there's no way. And Morning Joe is just shitting all over him. Okay, so let's get into a little bit more with these fucking shills, right? Like, disloyal shills. And, how shills can be bought, can be discredited, right? So here's Mika. First, this is from yesterday.
Just moments ago, former President Joe Biden posted a statement about his prostate cancer diagnosis, writing on social media, quote, "Cancer touches us all. Like so many of you."
What the fuck? Cancer touches us all. It touches us all. It's not some fucking pedophile, right?
Jill and I have learned that we are strongest in the broken places Thank you for lifting us up with love and support.
We're strongest in the broken places. Fuck you. Fuck you. You're creepy in the broken places.
Just moments ago, former President.
Okay, so like listen to her voice, right? But let's review some of these other things. Let me go to the other pieces here. So this is before then. This is about a year ago. We'll find out. I'll get the exact date. So this is before the bad debate performance, but not that far before it.
There's such a challenge for the Biden team because, as I've said here on the show over the past couple weeks, I've spent a good bit of time with Joe Biden. I've spent a couple of hours with Joe Biden, sitting, talking, going around the world as far as talking issues, talking the economy, talking inflation. And I must say, when I was...
This is his fucking Gumby Doo, man. I always struck by his beady little eyes, his weird little chin, and his Gumby Doo. He's a fucking cartoon character. You know, and I don't care about how people look, but, you know, this is... I mean, it doesn't affect me, right? It interests me. But it also, like, what? Right? How is this cartoon character on TV? But so this is, you know, probably... I would say June of last year. They said maybe a year ago. And Joe Biden, everybody thinks he's senile. And it's out there. Like January of that past year, so 4 months before that. 3-4 months before when this is, again, I'll get the exact date when we're done. I didn't look ahead of time, but I think it said 1 year ago. And so everyone thought that Joe Biden was senile. Like 70% of the people said he should step down. They didn't trust his cognitive abilities. That's past January. And these guys are shilling for him hard here, right?
Talking to him, my thought wasn't, oh, poor guy. My thought was, oh, my God, I wish Dr. Brzezinski were on the other side of the table right now, because these two guys, I mean, 50 years of experience, and Joe Biden hasn't forgotten it. He may get pissed off at a press conference, and he may be thinking about the Mexican border deal and say Mexico instead of Egypt. He knows what he's talking
You might say Mexico instead of Egypt. Yeah.
about. He circles back around, gets to Egypt. He might misplace a word here and there, but you talk to him for hours at a time. Is he slower? Does he move slower? Yeah, he's moved slower. Is he stiffer? Yeah, he moves stiffer. Does he have trouble walking sometimes? Yeah, so did FDR. We got out of the Depression. We won a GD war against Nazism and against the Japanese.
So here it's this is the Utah primary. And so during the Utah primary, Trump beat Nikki Haley. This is when the Utah primary is. I can check that real quick here. The Utah primary was March 5th of last year. So this is a little bit over a year ago. 13 months. And by July, Joe Biden was, did the debate performance, right? And so in January, and that whole year, we all knew that Joe Biden was fucked, right? Like the Democratic Party was fucked. Everybody knew it, right? People, Stephen A. Smith was like, people like that were saying things, like other, Democratic voting type people were saying this guy's got to go. It was in the, ethos. And he's saying this obviously because he's trying to say Joe Biden. The title of this video is Why This Version of Biden is the Best Version of Biden.
But comparing that guy's mental state, I've said it for years now, he's cogent. Mm-hmm. But I undersold him when I said he was cogent. He's far beyond cogent. In fact, I think he's better than he's ever been intellectually, analytically, because he's been around for 50 years. And, I don't know if people know this or not, Biden used to be a hothead. Sometimes that Irishman would get in front of the reasoning. Sometimes he would...
Holy shit. If he said this imagine if he said this about a woman or a black person or a gay, like it was okay to shit on Irish people.
Say things he didn't want to say. This is, and I don't really, you know what? I don't really care. Start your tape right now because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth.
F you if you can't handle the truth. I'm about to tell you the truth. I've been lying the whole time. But now I'm telling you the truth. I've been lying to you for years. But finally, I'm going to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth.
This version of Biden, intellectually and
Look, as above, so below over here.
analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years. The Brzezinskis have known him for 50 years. If it weren't the truth, I wouldn't say it. And
So Mika's dad, Brzezinski, Vladimir Brzezinski, was a big time, New World Order piece of shit, right? I mean, he's a part of this whole think tank. He created some of these, these CFO or whatever, Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, whatever these things were. And, so they're all close together. And they spent lots of time, Biden would just show up, and they would slather all over him like he's doing here. Now, we now know that he had Parkinson's and fucking prostate cancer, whilst he definitely had prostate cancer now. This is only a year ago, right? So they already had prostate cancer for probably years and taking all this fucking medication for it. And then on top of it, he's got, Parkinson's and all the medications that he's taking. Like, that's the other thing. Medications change your cognitive functioning, your functioning of your internal organs. They have side effects. We all know this, right? And so the list of medications can, he looked like a fucking corpse. Like his eyes were always dead. Like there's nothing going on there, right? He looked like he was, some dark angel had invaded, some demon had invaded his, like he had these dead eyes, right? And, all of the things that go with it. So it isn't just like he has these diseases, but he has whatever they're doing. Your body's supposed to produce testosterone, but that aggravates prostate cancer, according to these other doctors. So if they're suppressing this testosterone, that means that your body isn't functioning the way it's supposed to. A male body's supposed to produce testosterone. And as soon as you stop having testosterone, then, your immune system is fucked, and then all these other things go with it, right? All these other issues you have. When your testosterone drops, you get belly fat. It has all these effects on you in various ways, right? It might make you less aggressive, which, could be just more gentle, more wise. Yeah, sure. That goes along with it, right? But it's an essential aspect, and there's just like war on testosterone, but it's a, creative force. And, it's the energy that gives you the whatever it is to fight and go on and, to overcome obstacles and stuff. And, when you're losing, you're just like, whatever. I'll just, it pacifies you. And so, like, that's what they're saying. You got to remove all testosterone because it exacerbates the cancer in the prostate. Kennedy takes testosterone shots like these people do. And that's why he's able to, lift weights and do the things he's doing. But when you take artificial testosterone, your body stops producing it on its own. So you have to do that, you have to do that all for the rest of your life. And so they were, whatever, and with this cancer diagnosis, he's going to have no testosterone for the rest of his life. So, all these things are going on. And he just said this thing. Let's go back. That was a wonderful moment here.
Version of Biden.
This is a little bit here.
Your tape right now because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years. The Brzezinskis have known him for 50 years. If it weren't the truth, I wouldn't say it. And you read the New York.
Okay. So you are discredited as a person and a journalist for fucking ever. You're saying a guy who has Parkinson's and thyroid cancer is in his best version? A guy who's turning, so Guy who's turning 80. You're saying that, right? You're saying that he's the best version of Biden, and that fuck you if you guys can't handle it. The truth. I'm telling you the truth for the first time. So let's jump forward to July of that coming year. So it's March, April, May, June, July. So 4 months later, and now let's hear what he's saying. So this is the first time he Judased him, right? Because you heard how he slathered all over him. And so March, that's March 5th. Then, rolls around to June. And then the debate with Trump was July, whatever it was, right? Early July. And so a couple months later, this is the worst debate performance. After telling his viewers, don't bail on Biden, this is the best version of Biden. F you if you can't handle the truth.
In 50, 60, 70 years, the strongest dollar in half a century. The strongest military relative to the rest of the world, I would argue, and many others would argue, since 1945. I think his presidency has been an unqualified success. If, however, you believe, as do I, and as do so many people who watch this program and who...
Look at this dude here.
Fear. Just how dark of a place a second Donald Trump term.
So remember, he's going to go, they're going to be some of the first people that meet with Donald Trump. Like they go to Mar-a-Lago. They have the studio now in Florida. They built like a $12 million house in Florida. Like they got that kind of money from MSNBC. They have that kind of viewership. They're both making like $8 million a year, some shit like that. And they build this house in Florida. Now they do everything, via like satellite link and things. They don't go to the studio in MSNBC. They have their own place. They go to Mar-a-Lago and everyone shits on them for selling out to Trump after going after him for so long, which again, they're doing now, of course, but they went and met with him. And the way that, they were the number one Biden fans, right?
We'll take America.
My dog's itching for fleas. That's something, not fleas, ticks.
Then I think it's critical that we ask the same questions about this man I love.
He loves him. Fucking loves this guy. He loves this testosterone-less Alzheimer, Parkinson's motherfucker. He loves this guy. He loves him. I love him so much. I love this guy. This guy I love. I love him. Do you love him?
Ask the same questions about this man I love.
I love him. I love
respect, and whose public service in saving this country from Donald Trump over the last 3.5 years I honor and always will. I think we have to ask the same questions of him that we have asked of Donald Trump.
Yeah, you're fucking way too late. You should have asked these questions in 2019 when the guy was unfit for presidency. I said it in 2019 when I first saw him, when he reemerged. And, there was the first part was this. The guy, and, I'll put my long, I think I'm going to, we'll see how this video goes. But I think I'm going to put my long Biden compilation I just made from videos 2 days ago. So this is... people come find this video, some time from now. Because this is going to be about Biden and Trump. And I'm going to go after the Trumpers. I got a great Trump comment. And, the same thing with Biden as I'm going to say about Trump is, I'm telling you the truth all the time. Mishka's going to say here coming up in this little clip, we're not spinning right now. You see we're not spinning. Which means they were spinning all the other times. Which means they're lying to their audience. Right? People who, buy into a political candidate, buy into a point of view, and lie to you, which happens in the truth community all the time. Like all the people in the truth community, and maybe lie to yourself. All the people in the truth community who didn't call bullshit on Trump's fake assassination attempt. And we'll get into more of that, too, as we go through this, because Trump got all mad about this goofy thing posted by, Comey, that clown Comey, right? But I'm telling you the truth all the time. At least, a a more accurate version. Like, I have my subjective lenses, but I don't care. Like, I don't have any, I believe the country is inevitably, fucked in terms of our materiality, of our system. It was, we have these grenades. Like, I talk about the grenades with Biden having Parkinson's, and Kamala Harris, the Democratic Party had two grenades that went off in July. And now the Trump grenade's going off. And the bigger grenade is the usury economy, a debt-based economy, which historically has always ended the way this is ending now, because it's just the way that system ends, right? It's a lie. It's a demonic system. It goes against the will of God. It's it's false economy. It's not based in, goods and services. I mean, it's not based in God. It's not based in a divine world. It's based in debt, and anything that's based in debt is doomed to failure in an epic fashion, because you're living a lie. You're pretending an IOU. You're pretending debt is wealth, right? And so when I get into this with the Trumpers, just remember, I'm the one who told you the truth, right? I told you the truth about the, there was people that wrote to me when the bullshit Trump assassination attempt happened. And they said, wrote comments and said, they've watched like 60 different truther channels, and only 3 of them were questioning whether it was real or not. When I was saying it's straight up fake, the Trump assassination attempt thing was fake as fuck. It was a WWE style event, and he went for the whole thing, right? And most of the people who came here saw that, right? And the rest of the truthers were either lying to you or lying to themselves, and not because they wanted Trump. They didn't want to call him out on it, and so they pretended, or they did whatever they did to not see the obvious, right? And so, these guys. Well, let's just go back to it here.
Trump since 2016, and that is, if he were CEO and he turned in a performance like that, would any corporation in America, any Fortune 500 corporation in America, keep him on as CEO? If this were Donald Trump, time and time again, we talked about the Goldwater. Where's the Barry Goldwater? To walk over and tell Richard Nixon it was over, to tell Donald Trump it was over. And now the question is, do Democrats need to do the same thing of Joe Biden? I mean, these are hard questions.
They didn't need to do it this way, right? They didn't need to wait till Joe Biden flamed out in epic fashion in a debate performance, because all the things he did in the debate, he had done at times in 2019 in the debates. In the it was more candidates, right? Like he had moments, Parkinson moments, he had dementia moments in 2019 and 2020, and that's why they hid him away. When they hid him away, and he must have, these people saw things behind the scenes, right? That Joe Biden was not always there. He would have these moments, his lapses, like, why did Grandpa put his shoes in the refrigerator moments, right? Things like that. Moments of like, oh my God, he's glitching out. He's not there. And all the things he displayed in that debate, he had done one time or another over the past 5 years. So it just all came together in one horrible performance. And then, of course, we find out now he didn't know who George Clooney was. And so they handled him. He was fighting multiple health issues. And as you get older, you just don't have the energy. Like, you just don't. I mean, as I'm 60 now, I'll be 61, and I have longevity in my family. 3 grandparents lived past 90. Both my parents lived past 90. Siblings who are in their 70s, who are, my brother's probably close to, my brother's 77. And, still functioning and staying active. My grandfather, who died when he was 80, the only one, he died of lung cancer. He was in 2 world wars, and he was a fireman before they had masks, and he died of lung cancer. He smoked like a chimney, and he smoked a pipe, and worked with toxic chemicals. So, that's why he died of lung cancer. But other than that, he was stronger than probably all the rest of them. And so, it's you just slow down, and you just don't have the energy. And then you see how the presidency ages guys. Like when they go in there and they come out gray, they come in with regular color hair, whatever their hair color is, and they leave gray. And so they were keeping Joe Biden away from all that. Like he couldn't do what a normal president would do. He was a complete puppet. And these guys went along with it, right? Until it embarrassed them and everyone else who shilled for him in that debate performance. And like it's now obvious. But we know now he had Parkinson's and he had prostate cancer. So
But the fact is, friends, failure's just not an option. In 2024, failure is not an option. So,
well, guess what? Kamala Harris failed. Remember what she said, when we fight, we win? So you guys didn't fight. Because you got steamrolled by a guy who was hard capped at 48%. 52% of the people said they'd never vote for him, and you still got fucking steamrolled.
who I love, who I respect, who I revere for their work and their duty to service over their lifetime really is not relevant. It's not relevant for any of us. It's not relevant for Democratic leaders. It's not relevant for anyone. The question is, we know Joe Biden can govern. Mm-hmm. And again, I'll debate that issue with anyone and I will win. I will destroy anybody.
Will you win? Will you fucking win? Because no one thinks that way. Like Trump blaming Biden is winning message for him because people think that Joe Biden didn't govern well. And so they talked about him like he was the greatest president ever, but he wasn't governing. He had two diseases. He was the oldest president ever. So just based in age, he was the oldest one. I mean, based in, all the other presidents. He's the oldest president, the oldest two candidates ever to run against each other in 2020. And then again, it would have been in 2024. And he was clearly not governing if he's, taking all these medications and suffering from terminal cancer. Like he had terminal cancer. They were delaying terminal cancer. Now it's terminal. Cancer that's going to kill this motherfucker, right? And whilst having dementia and Parkinson's.
Wants to debate Joe Biden's record over the past 3.5 years. He can run the White House. He can run the country effectively, despite the barrage of lies that constantly come at him, like Donald Trump's lies last night. But can he run for president in 2024? Donald Trump lied over and over and over and over again. And Joe Biden couldn't respond to any of those lies. In fact, as the New York Times said, he spent much of the night with his mouth agape and his eyes darting back and forth.
Which we saw before. It's not a new symptom, right? Not like, oh my God, this is a new behavior. This is Joe. We all saw this. Like people who were willing to say Joe Biden had cognitive issues saw this since 2019 and even before that. Probably you could see this if you went back. I didn't see him when he was in Obama's last years in 2016 or whatever it was, right? 15. And so, he was gone. Like he should have been retired. After Obama stepped down, Biden was done.
He couldn't fact check anything Donald Trump said. And not only that, he missed one layup after another. He couldn't respond effectively to Donald Trump trying to overthrow American democracy on January 6th. He couldn't respond effectively to Donald Trump's continued stream of lies about his own record. And he couldn't even respond effectively on the issue of abortion, where for some reason he darted wildly to the issue of immigration.
So when Jon Stewart covered this, he said, wait, did you just immigrate? He set it up like, all right, because Joe Biden had one issue that everybody was on his side, and that was abortion. Or not everybody, but 60% of Americans are not wanting to get rid of abortion because Americans love to kill fetuses. So, 60% of them at least, right? And so, fetus murder. And so, for whatever reason, he brought up a girl who was murdered by an immigrant. And it was like, what are you doing, bro? This is your one chance to shine. And you actually handed something back to Donald Trump. And they said Donald Trump went to this woman's funeral because Donald Trump wanted to maximize that this immigrant had killed her. And why would you bring it? It was like, and Jon Stewart's joke, did you just immigration your abortion question? So it was like a disaster. I'd almost like to watch the debate again. I don't have the time to do it, but it was so like hilariously bad.
And on immigration, as I said yesterday morning, any Democrat that can't turn to their Republican opponent and blast them for killing the strongest, toughest border bill in the history of America, drafted by a right-wing senator from Oklahoma, may not be up to the job. And so that's the question. I know people are waiting and say, oh, and David Plouffe, I have such great respect for David Plouffe. He said we need to wait 3 or 4 days because Donald Trump really turned off swing voters in a lot of focus groups once they saw him again. And that makes a lot of sense.
That didn't happen. We know that everyone was like, oh my God. Nobody gave a shit about what Donald Trump did or didn't do. Only these pundits, these fucks who hated Donald Trump. Everyone was like, oh my God, Joe Biden's senile. And this just didn't happen overnight. Like the majority of Americans felt like betrayed and lied to. And Democrats. And they were like, this is, you've been telling us how bad Trump is. And this is this piece of shit you're rolling out after you guys blocked democracy by not having a primary. And then like they were like scrambling like what the fuck to do because everyone knew Kamala sucks. That Kamala was unelectable. And she was the front runner and nobody wanted to take this over. Like the candidates that now are looking at 2028 because they don't believe Trump's going to destroy the country or they don't even care. They just want to look at their best option to win the presidency because they're all power hungry fucks, right? Like the people get into politics and, these things. There's a desire to have political power and fame and all the things go with it, right? There's, this is a big ego thing. And it gets worse over time. Like it doesn't, evaporate. I mean, if it does, they would step down. They would be like, oh yeah, this is not for me. And so if they lean into it, they become demonic. And so, this is just silly.
The door was opened so many times. This race should not be close. We've been asking, why is this race close? We have no idea why this race is close. We saw last night why this race has been close and why I fear Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States unless things change. And I will say, Mika, the one thing that I know that you believe it may have been because he was sick, and I'm open to that fact because I'll just say, as I've said on the show, I spent 3 hours with this man, maybe back in March.
There's no way he didn't have senior moments then. There's just no way. There's no fucking way. He was, 3 hours, you saw stuff. And just him being old. But like we now know, his body was fucking not up for any kind of job. Like, if you're going to have prostate cancer at that age and they're going to give aggressive treatments, hormone treatments and the rest, you're done. It's time to retire. But you also have Parkinson's at the same time. The guy was a fucking wreck, right? His weekend at Bernie's. There's a corpse they rolled out there. I mean, I knew it was bad in 2019. I didn't know it was this fucking bad. And they were hiding this from the American people, right? This wasn't something they were like, oh, the American people will be sympathetic. Fuck you running a guy like that, right? And so they knew these things going into it, that this guy had 2 major health issues that are both, end of life stuff, both life-ending things. They're both career-ending. It's like a career-ending injury. It's like he blew out both Achilles and his knees at the same time, right? And broken legs and also arthritis. It's like, season-ending, career-ending type stuff, right? And he has 2 of them going on, and you're deceiving the American people. Like, this is, like, we now have to have like open medical. I mean, we should change the way that we deal with presidents and their medical, issues. Like, holy fuck, like, bro.
Hours, cogent, on top of the issues, on top of every issue around the world. And last night, he simply was not on the biggest debate stage ever. And I think what surprised me and what surprised a lot of people very close to Joe Biden is the fact that this man always rises to the occasion. And last night was sadly for him, and I believe for Democrats in this country. And again, if you believe what's at stake at this election is what we believe is at stake, I'll even use the word tragically. He tragically did not rise to the occasion last night.
Okay, so as you can see, you won't see us spinning here on Morning Joe.
Okay, so you did spin, right? I'll run the meme here in a second of Mika saying, that Trump is trying to control what the American people think, and that's our job. But he just did spin. Like, he said he would debate anybody on his ability to govern. Like, he did spin. He said a lot of things that weren't true. And this thing back in March, this is the best version of Biden. So these guys have lost all credibility, and they shouldn't have had any anyhow. Because, this is them Judasing a guy that they treated like the greatest president ever, and all these epic, things that he had done. Like, they were just shilling for what Joe Biden was saying. Like, the people out there that just mirror everything that Donald Trump says. These guys had, Biden derangement syndrome, right? The opposite way. Like, and they, but then they Judased him here. And then now, a year later, they're like, well, he had fucking prostate cancer. You don't feel lied to then? You're going in there and you're selling this guy. You're selling your fucking credibility and telling everyone that this is the best version of Biden. You're selling your soul like this way, and you're just all of it. You're to your audience, and then you get fucking spanked in this debate. Only a couple months later, and then you find out he's had on top of whatever dementia things that he had, which is Parkinson's, which you must know he has because the Parkinson doctors show up and on your own network. I'll put that compilation at the end of this video, right? And so you had all this information there. John Biden lied fucking to you and sold you out, and you were shilling for him in a way that was embarrassing. And then this fucking happens, right? I mean, he just fucked you in the like, and so I mean, now they're Judasing him, this little fucking Poindexter Gumby motherfucker and his dude here, and Joe Biden, like they went they went all in. They put their chips in the fucking middle of the table, and they went all in. They sold out. They went for broke, and Joe Biden fucked them, right? Joe Biden, like the whole thing, everything. So let me show you the Mika Brzezinski meme here, and then we'll move on to the Trump stuff.
The dangerous, edges here are that he's trying to undermine the media, trying to make up his own facts. And it could be that while unemployment and the economy worsens, he could have undermined the messaging so much that he can actually control exactly what people think. And that is our job.
Okay, so just finished the meditation. This guy looks a certain ethnicity here that isn't Catholic. I just finished the meditation for Tuesday, and we do individual sittings on the Gratefullness meditation. Things are moving and shaking in the meditation, in the Gratefullness meditation world, which I'm happy about. But I got this kind of epic Trump comment from a Trumper, which I'm going to get to in a bit. But I saw this yesterday. Let's start here. There's 4 major stories with Trump here. That, this is the Biden deception and the Trump deception, right? They're 2 different deceptions. Biden deception, one that he was an electable candidate, which he was for 3 times he wasn't. So they had to rig it for him for whatever reason. 2, that he was a good senator and vice president and politician before that, and he was a a lying scumbag with a son that was basically laundering money for him by selling access, all the Hunter Biden stuff. And then him being a groper, a snoozler, and a sniffer. He'd glom onto these women and kids, and like that was known about him. And I did a whole video about those swearing in it was a 2-hour video that just about him swearing in these senators and just glomming all over their family members in a gross way. Frottage, through physical contact, some creepy guy rubbing up against you in some subway or something, right? Like that kind of thing. So he was all of those things, right? And they had to deal with that going into the candidacy in 2019. Remember, they had a woman that he glommed onto and touched her hair. She was like a shill. And, the View was covering it, saying he's just a little bit over friendly. He's just being affectionate, those kind of things to make excuses for a guy who's like creepy. And then he was having physical issues, which they were lying about, right? Which now know. And so it was a major deception. And then Trump is the other side of the coin here with all the things, his fake assassination attempt and all the things that Trump, this idea that he was a good businessman and he isn't. And so, these two deeply flawed human beings being pushed on us as president in a time where the system is being forcefully collapsed around us because they can't provide for the American lifestyle anymore. America is, the lifestyle is out of stock. And so this is the first piece to this.
Joining me now is NBC's Keir Simmons and Richard Stengel, former Undersecretary
Stengel. She got Stengel.
State for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs and an MSNBC political analyst. Let's start with Ukraine, Keir. Trump says nothing was going to happen until he and Putin spoke. Now they have. What can we say about what might have been said?
Okay, so this is the Putin part. I want to get to the part that has... Okay, so I'm not sure when this show is on, but I saw this, and I think I was eating breakfast, so maybe it was late, around 10 o'clock or something yesterday. I don't know. I was eating breakfast late or whatever. But either way, let's get into it here.
All right, let's talk about the other big issue out there. What options does Trump have at this point in terms
Weird picture of Putin over here.
of the war in Gaza? Palestinian authorities say 375 people have been killed in the days since, making this one of the deadliest chapters in this war. A lot more injured and displaced. This morning, the IDF ordered people who live in Khan Yunis to evacuate ahead of what they say is an unprecedented attack. And not for nothing, the president was in the Middle East. He did not go to Israel. Where does this relationship stand, and what influence, if anything, do you think Trump has on any of this?
It's tragic, Chris, and, I'd say something similar about Netanyahu, as I said about Putin. I mean, he's been at this game for a very long time. Trump is not his first American president. It's probably his fourth American president. And as dependent as Israel is on the United States, and they are, Netanyahu's first audience is his domestic one, trying to stay in power, trying to prevent the prosecution of him, which is going on, trying to preserve his control over Israeli politics. That is number one for Netanyahu. Number two is how the U.S. perceives it. Again, Trump doesn't have as much leverage over Netanyahu as he probably should. President Biden.
No leverage, right? No fucking leverage. Like, he's owned by Israel. And Trump's just realizing this. See, this is the thing. Trump was, I don't think Trump is, he's not in on the joke. He is the joke, right? Like, they're not laughing with him. They're laughing at him. Like, Trump is, and the same thing with Biden, because Biden was senile. We saw that when Biden showed up to the G5 summit, and Boris Johnson had to basically handle the guy, and the guy was just speaking out of turn, and everyone's like, oh my God, this guy, right? And so, and they all have to defer to the American president, and yet they know these guys are clowns. And so I don't think Trump's in on it, right? I think he's in on some things, but he's not curious, so he doesn't want to know things. He wants to announce things and make proclamations, and just think that everyone's going to knuckle under to his agenda. We're going to see this with Walmart thing. He's whining about Walmart again, and he thinks that everyone's just going to go along with him. He doesn't do anything to win people over or justify what he's doing or explain what he's doing in a real way, because he doesn't have a fucking plan, right? And so he said some weird shit about Gaza. We'll go back to that weird video we posted, that he could just own Gaza because he's just declaring he owns it, like we could declare we own Greenland. Like, he thinks America can just glom shit, right? And that the rest of the world, you don't have to get people to buy into it. And so let's say Trump had a vision, which he doesn't. And let's say that Trump's policies could work and they can't. But let's just say they could. Even if they could work and would work, he would have to be what people call a disruptor. He would have to, take money away from people who don't want to give their money and power away. And he would have to rearrange everything in a way that some people are going to be unhappy. Right? You guys all get that. That's what would happen. That's the kind of change that's going to happen. And the American people would have to sacrifice. Like, if there's going to be real change, because we need real change, there would have to be some sacrifice for everybody. And so you'd have to win everybody over. You have to win the Democrats over. You'd have to win the media over. You'd have to win the American public over. You have to win the people in these other countries over. And Trump doesn't do that shit, right? He just expects them to knuckle under. He's not somebody, he'll lie to you and grift in you and promise you things he can't deliver. But he isn't for some long-term, grifters have a short-term scam they're running. And then they get the fuck out of town, right? But if you're going to do something, you're in for the long haul. You'd have to not only win everybody over for now, but you'd have to get everyone to stick with it through somebody else's presidency, the next presidency, and that could even be a Democrat, depending on what's going on. And so, you need to do those things. And Trump hasn't done that. You have to network. I don't like to do those things. I'm not good at it, which I'll get into in a bit, right? And so, Trump isn't doing any of those things. And he just, he's a blowhard, and they're laughing at him. And so, like, he's just realizing that Israel isn't his friend. That Israel's going to do whatever they're going to do, and it's a one-sided relationship. Like, I think he's getting that idea, and now they're going to tell him, if you go up against Israel, they'll cripple you. Like, they have ways of getting back at you, and so you're owned by them, and he's just dealing with that, right? Like, I think he's just getting those kind of talks, because other shit that he's doing, he can get away with because it's being backed by the powers that be, because it's destroying America. But he starts fucking around with Israel's money, then there'll be consequences, right? And severe ones. And so he's just realizing he's been cucked by Israel.
Biden tried to deal with Netanyahu, potentially withdrawing aid, suspending aid. There are different things that the U.S. president can do, and thus far, he hasn't attempted them. And insofar as he's frustrated about this, insofar as he would like to end the killing, which I completely agree with, President Trump has to flex some muscle vis-a-vis Bibi Netanyahu.
Can I ask you really quickly if you think Pope Leo can have any influence of this? We think about the picture of President Trump and Zelensky in the aftermath of the funeral of Pope Francis, and now we know that a letter was delivered by J.D. Vance to Pope Leo inviting him to the White House.
Oh, so that sucks. I have the rest of the video. I'll go get it off the TV. Okay, so I went and, I recorded this because I didn't know whether they would put it up, and they didn't. And some of the key piece here, it says underneath where it says, let me get this other picture here. It says here, Netanyahu says Israel will control Gaza, which is the main point of this thing. Let me show you the stuff with the Pope here, and we'll come back to that. But that's why I was like, oh, he's saying fuck you to Trump's vision of, let's get back to it here first.
a letter was delivered by J.D. Vance to Pope Leo, inviting him to the White House, an invitation from President Trump. Could he serve as some sort of intermediary in either of these?
You know, Chris, it's an interesting idea, and the Pope has.
It's a silly fucking idea. It's a goofy fucking idea. You have a brand new pope. He's talking about peace and fuck him. You know, like it's all that bullshit after all the shit that he and other priests and bishops and cardinals and popes presided over with the abuse and all this shit, right? Like you can never escape that stuff. And then all the land, all the bad stuff that these religions have done to prevent people from connecting to God and bullshit them and, you know, lie about basically change Jesus's original words and intentions. But look at these two motherfuckers next to him. Like, what's going on? Like, they're both supposed to be Catholic. They're all happy. I mean, just weird shit, right?
Has a very, very big pulpit. He has maybe the bulliest pulpit of all.
Let's go back to that. He's a Bears fan. He's got the bulliest pulpit of all. Yeah, but neither one of these countries is Christian. It's Israel versus Palestinians that are Jews and Muslims, and, you know, it's just so silly. But apparently he's a Bears fan, so.
He has maybe the bulliest pulpit of all. People care what he thinks. People in Russia care what he thinks. People in Ukraine care what he thinks. He's obviously
either his wife aged 40 years or she was, you know, she had some kind of youth spell because she looks like she's 80 years old here. Like, what is going on?
Man of peace. I think it would be a very interesting idea. I don't think the Pope would actually, it was probably the last time popes were negotiating agreements between warring parties was in the 16th century, but there's no reason that he couldn't get involved and that he couldn't press both sides to make compromises. That's the thing. It's the Putin who needs to compromise. Zelensky has already been compromised. So insofar as the Pope would have some influence there, that would be great.
I guess they're talking about Ukraine and Russia, which is the same bullshit, right? Silly idea. But let's get back to the Israel thing here.
New this morning, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the IDF is, quote, moving toward full control of Gaza.
Okay, so we now know that Trump got cucked here, right? Trump had this silly idea, and Netanyahu, humored him. It was the idea that America could just take over the Gaza Strip and turn it into some vacation paradise. But we all know that Netanyahu wants, and Israel wants, and the Zionists want all of Israel, which includes a lot more than Palestine. I mean, the promised land, according to the Bible, both the Christian Bible, Old Testament, and the Jewish Bible, it's not called the Torah, whatever it's called, don't care, don't tell me, don't need to know. That this idea that God promised the Jews the land of Israel. And there are Christians who believe in this, and there are Jews that believe in this, and they're called Zionists. And this is what this has been about the whole time. And to do that, they have to get rid of all the Palestinian people. And Trump's silly ideas, Trump had two silly ideas when he met with Netanyahu. Number one is that they would take over Gaza, U.S. would, and turn it into a vacation paradise because he's a real estate developer, and they have, this pristine ocean there, whatever, the Mediterranean Ocean, which is beautiful vacation land, like Florida-esque, these kind of places, right? And, tropical beachfront property. And the other part was that all these other countries would take 2 million Palestinians, refugees, into them. None of the countries want to do that. The Palestinians don't want to go. And so what is Israel's options? If they can't ship the Palestinians out, they got to kill them, right? There's a genocide fucking happening there. And they know Trump is hamstrung with so many other bullshit things he's doing. And, Trump is certainly owned by Israel in various ways. And so Trump wants them to stop the killing. I think Trump has some sort of, under his demonic exterior, there's a little bit of a heart, like a Grinch-like, heart there that doesn't want these innocent people to die. And at first he was like, we're just going to go in there, go balls to the wall, right? Remember he said, whatever those quotes were that he said about Hamas, and if they didn't turn over all the hostages, there'd be hell to pay or whatever it was, right? And so now I think he realizes he's getting played because they're saying so, and yet he can't do shit about it. And so let's go to the other piece there. Okay, so remember, this is, people are really bummed by this. And I'm a Trump supporter, but only Christ will set you free. Please, Mr. President, with all respect, ask them to remove that video. We love everything you're doing for the country, but this one's not right. And so this was a video made by a couple guys experimenting with the new AI technology. They did it as a goof. It was supposed to be internal. It wasn't even supposed to be public. And Trump got a hold of it. They were doing it like they're not Trumpers. And they had this, idea to turn these bearded men dancing, bearded women, big-ass Trump balloon. Like they were doing it as a goof, and Trump took it seriously. He doesn't even know he's dancing with some frickin' belly dancer, manna from heaven, Trump Gaza, this whole thing. And Trump, he should take it down now because it's a fucking embarrassment, right? Trump Gaza, Elon Musk, and then these two pool buddies, who are, no longer friends. He's got up there that they would be doing this, right? Sipping whatever little drinks they have here after they've committed ethnic cleansing in this area. It's horrific. It's horrible. And Trump's team put it up here. Trump, so, and that's just not the case, right? Like now Trump knows he's owned. Like he's kind of getting the sense when this all goes down that he can't. See, it's easy to, he's got leverage over Israel. All you got to do, any president could do is say, we're going to cut you off. But every owned politician, which is all of them, all the national politicians, practically all the senators and the House of Representatives and all the, whatever it is, are owned by Israel. And so, and the media and this, all of it. And so all the Zionists that are involved. And so, like, he's realizing that he's got power over them, but he doesn't really have any. Because he can't execute that power. And so when you're talking about a guy who's just a clueless piece of shit, right? And he came up with these goofy ideas, and Netanyahu was, that sounds great. And meanwhile, Netanyahu was just planning to kill all those Palestinians in Gaza. Then they'll set in on the West Bank. And then wherever else, they're expanding Syria and all these other countries, right? I show you this map constantly. For those people who believe in Zionism, who believe that God promised Israel there's a promised land, and I've read the biblical quotes, then you believe a little bit of Turkey, 70% of Syria, half of Iraq, a good chunk of Saudi Arabia, Jordan and these other countries, Lebanon, these little countries around there, and a good portion of Egypt are all a part of what was originally given to the Jews by God called the Promised Land. They have the Mediterranean Sea here, excellent property here. They'd have both sides of the Red Sea here connecting to this area and a little bit of the Persian Gulf. And so they would be on multiple oceans. And for ports, they would have all the, Gaza, right outside of Gaza, there's all this natural gas and oil that they could be drilling for. Of course, they would have that vacation area, vacation money, tourist money. They would become a superpower. If Israel had all this land, all the oil, all the resources, all the American military capabilities, they'd be a nuclear power. They would be on the same level as China and Russia and America. Militarily and economically, they would be in the upper echelon. And as soon as they would do that, they could easily say, fuck you, America, and probably will, right? In fact, America fighting a war for them and being taken down and them moving in on all these properties while the rest of the world wages is probably a good indication of their plan. And Trump is probably just realizing he's been puppeted by them, in some way. Like, I don't know how much Trump even knows. Like, he just, that wouldn't happen to me. Whatever he'd say. But he's getting played, right? And he's realized he's getting played, but he doesn't, his nuts have been clipped just like Joe Biden's estrogen-based ball sack. Because, they have to treat his cancer with taking away all the testosterone. And so, it's just a fucking mess. Okay, so I want to move on to Trump slamming Walmart. Read this comment. I went out shopping and I hurt my back a little bit just by twisting. It's pouring rain today. And then I took a long nap. I was tired for some reason. Took me a while to get going again. But anyways, here's one last piece about this take control of Israel.
Netanyahu of Israel has said today that Israel will take control of all of Gaza. Is that a goal that President Trump is comfortable with or that he supports?
I'll have to talk to the president about those comments as they just came, I believe, from the prime minister this morning, and I'll let him speak on that. The president has made it very clear he wants to see this conflict in the region end. He wants.
So, no, he's not happy with those comments, right? Like that wasn't what he said. So, where's him and Bibi sitting by the fucking pool and some luxury hotels that some Trump tower that he put up there, like now all that stuff. So no, he's not happy with that. You know it because, I'll have to ask him about that and then I won't answer the question because I can't because you wouldn't like what he's going to say, right? Or he can't, what he's going to say can't be made public because he's pissed at Netanyahu because he's realized he's owned by the guy and Israel in general. So Moody's downgrades the United States credit rating.
He just gave Trump's economy a downgrade over worries his big, beautiful tax bill will add to the U.S. debt. And Walmart's decision and announcement that it plans to raise prices to cover the cost of Trump's tariffs earned them a schoolyard bully taunt from Donald Trump, who told Walmart to, quote, eat the tariffs. The downgrade by Moody's puts an end to the last AAA credit rating the U.S. had. Moody's citing the GOP tax bill currently being worked on by Congress as adding to decades of mounting debt. New York Times reports it like this, quote, one factor jarring markets is a bill in Congress that would make President Trump's signature 2017 tax cuts permanent and could add trillions of dollars to federal debt. The U.S. credit rating downgrade and worries about debt and deficits could further upset financial markets if they begin to shake the safe haven status of Treasury bonds. Here's what one Federal Reserve official told our friend CNBC's Steve Leisman.
With that downgrade, it will have implications for the cost of capital and a bunch of other things. And so it could have a ripple through the economy. Today, things are very much in flux. There's a lot of uncertainty.
One of the key drivers of that uncertainty, Donald Trump's tariff scheme. As the country's largest
So we're going to go to Aaron Burnett with a similar story. But we know what Trump said about this before I cover this.
retailer warns that prices there could go up as soon as the end of this month because of those tariffs. Trump is lashing out at them, of course, saying this, quote, between
So we already saw this, but
Walmart and China, they should, as is said, all caps, quote, eat the tariffs and not charge valued customers, all caps, anything. I'll be watching. And so
see, one of the worst things about Trump, and it's a real immaturity. Now, other people in public life have this as well, but they're at least clueless. They have enough of a clue to not say these things publicly, right? And it's a plague that the Trumpers share with Donald Trump as well. It's the inability to receive what you dish out, right? It's the inability to get back what you give, because it's a principle a spiritual principle that everything you do comes back around and is therefore done to you, right? Anything that you do, a hateful thought, a negative thought, circles the universe and then comes back to the thinker in a different form, and it's a cyclical, cyclical mistreatment, right? You do something that's abusive because you were abused as a kid, right? You were mistreated by your parents or whatever it is, schoolyard bullies or whatever, somebody else, some outside entity, whatever. You were abused, mistreated, and then you end up being an abuser, and then you are abused as an elderly person, or you come back in your next life and are abused as a child. These are the things that happen. That the behaviors that you exhibit that are, things that are done to you, you repeat those behaviors, and then those things are then done back to you again, and it never ends. It's the reason why people, mistreating the environment, using force, doing things in a way that, ultimately comes back to you. And that if God has a plan, which God is a plan, right? It means that there's some sort of order of the universe. That, of course, is the way. And any kind of bullshit thing you've been told by your religion that you'll just get out of here accepting Jesus, that's not the case. Like, you have to live a life free of these types of entrapments, entanglements. These entanglements will bring you back into this existence. And so, people understand that. And Trump is such a whiny little bitch that, and maybe he's just more transparent about that. And he's less self-conscious about it because of being a little Lord Fauntleroy. I mean, he's been a famous rich person. He grew up as a rich person. His dad gave him $15 million in a multi-million-dollar business. So he grew up with a different kind of a lifestyle. And he was treated in a way where he was, Mr. Trump this, Mr. Trump that. And, he was able to treat others in a not good way and bully them and then not receive anything back from them. Like, he was in a position where he had leverage over all his employees and various people. And he'd bully them with lawyers or bully them with his platform, his ability, even on social media, stuff like with Rosie O'Donnell and shit like that. And he was able to force himself on people and make them bend to his will, vendors and other people, by not paying them. And, that's why he says, oh, you're so nasty. But he says things all the time that are horrible. And he expects that other people shouldn't say those same things to him. So let's go a little bit further here.
So your customers, 3 exclamation points. Now, Walmart's price hikes cut against absolutely everything that Donald Trump has been telling the country about his tariff scheme. Stuff like this from his press secretary.
It's what Trump would say, like I said this when this came out, that if, like Trump wants a luxury jet and wants his lifestyle to be elevated, and he's monetizing his presidency, but he wants you to cut back on your use of pencils and dolls and shit like that, right? He wants you to cut back on your Chinese junk that you're buying cheaply at Walmart. He wants you to pay more for all these things. And he wants Walmart to eat all these, all the prices, the price hikes and these other things, because somehow they have some loyalty to him. But if Biden had asked to do those very same things, there'd be outcries of socialism. The right-wing people would say, oh, this is socialism, and they'd be coming out with their patriotic bullshit. How dare you tell us to stop? So it's not accepting the same consequences for the same behavior. What would Trump say about Biden if he had done these very same things? He'd be slamming him. And if they were being done to him, if he was asked to cut back as a billionaire or absorb, tariffs in his business, things that were making his business more expensive, and then a president saying, hey, don't raise your prices, he'd be like, fuck you, because that's the American way. This is what business works, right? So it's a general a lack of, just understanding that the same things that you're doing to other people can be done to you, right? The same things that you exhibit in the world can also happen back to you. Like, everyone should be aware of that, right?
Very.
Tariffs are a tax hike on foreign countries that, again, have been ripping us off.
That was never true. Still isn't. Trump's reaction to Walmart having to raise their prices reluctantly then is a bit of a tell. If tariffs are, as she said, a tax on foreign countries, as she'd like the country to believe, then why would Walmart need to, quote, eat the tariffs, as Trump said, instead of raising prices on...
Yeah, this is exactly what I said. So I want to show you something else here, then I want to read this comment from a Trumper.
Edward.
Yes, thanks.
And then I'll go to you.
Thanks,
You're
guys.
welcome.
I want to get the president's reaction to Moody's downgrading the credit rating of the United States.
Sure. Well, look, the president talked about this over the weekend. The Secretary of Treasury also talked about it. When you look at the world has confidence in the United States of America and our economy once again. The president just last week secured trillions of dollars in investments from countries in the Middle East. We have seen trillions of dollars of...
See, a lot of these investments that he's saying are things that were already being done and things that aren't going to change the dynamics of our economy. But her saying that the world has confidence is not true, right? It's not true because Moody's just downgraded. If this happened where Moody's upgraded the United States, Trump would use it as like a bragging point. Oh my God, it just shows you how great we're doing. And the problem with the Trump confidence game is they're always so positive that they're doing the right thing, in a cultish, mindless way. And the rhetoric that comes out of her mouth and all the other people, when results and things are telling you something else, right? Whenever you're doing something wrong, you do things hiddenly, in secret, behind closed doors, in insidious ways. And, that's a lot of what Trump does. But he, says these things in a different way. When he explains what he's doing to the American public, he lies about it. There's a lot of spin, a lot of, inaccurate information, right? Which is the hallmark of the Trump presidency, who is he as a person. And then all his yes men that he has now assembled around him agree with him. But, the guy's gone bankrupt 6 fucking times because he takes risks and does stupid shit, and he's not, a genius or a wonderkin. He's played with his father's money, and somehow, a guy who's had his businesses collapse over and over again finds a way. I mean, The Apprentice saved him by his, saving his brand, and he didn't get paid for The Apprentice, but he made all the money from those infomercials he did for the businesses that would be on The Apprentice, whatever the task was. And he made a fortune both in receiving money for the, these infomercials that he did, but also which was a smart business move on his part. But, he was saved because of this show that was about him being some brilliant businessman, and he was anything but. And all the people who were around him on the set, and the people observed him, observed what he was really like, observed his shitty offices and things, and his low, barely any staff. I mean, he didn't have some big corporation that he was running. It was just smoke and mirrors, right? And so he's now convinced the American people that he's successful, that show helped them, and that he is, a brilliant businessman. He's simply not. And you take a desperate group of people that they see the America that they grew up with and fading, and they, buy into his bullshit, right? So let me read this comment. Okay. So there's a few comments I want to get to first that will, anyway, they'll make sense as I read this. So this is a video about my brother Ray and leftovers and misfits. You mentioned the problem you had with ads. It isn't just you. I think it's all YouTube. For example, I complained to 2 channels. I use one on a drum loop for a particular guitar and other in sleep meditation. In both cases, they were unaware the ads were being played during their videos. YouTube is just overdoing it lately, which is stupid because it isn't hard to block all ads, and they are pushing people to do that. So I can block all of them, but I can't block some of them. But YouTube isn't compensating people for the ads for whatever reason. This is like an ongoing YouTube problem. So it isn't specifically towards truthers, because somebody wrote and said, Paul, you of all people should know that this is some corporate bullshit and this kind of thing. I didn't copy that comment, but I'm like, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about keeping my channel afloat, right? And this isn't specific towards just truthers. It's anybody that doesn't have like the A rating, so let's call it, like they give a AAA rating to some channels, and they give various other ratings to other channels, and the ads that they run, the comedian Kyle Doonigan, who does things that are, cross the line of, being not suitable for work or those kind of things, in terms of vulgarity or whatever. And he was, getting lots of views and making no money. He was getting hundreds of thousands of views, even 1 million views, and making $25 on the video because the way they run the ads, right? See, the leverage that all of us have over YouTube is we need to be compensated. And so if they don't pay you anything, then you just stop making videos, which they don't want, right? And so they kind of have to figure out what's the least amount they can pay you and keep on going. But we'll get into that more in just a bit. Another person wrote, free Diddy. That was their comment. Puff Daddy's freak offs is the beast defining you, your success. That video where I talked about Puff Daddy and his weird freak offs. And somebody just wrote free Diddy, which I thought was really funny. And then, let me see, a video under 1 hour in this economy. So my video, like I make videos usually over 2 hours or whatever it is. So I thought those were all funny comments. But then there was this one. And all these kind of came in at the same time. And there were some responses for it. One of the persons wrote, you don't have to endure anything here. Pretty sure it's your choice. And so this person, so that was the response somebody wrote to this person's comment. Paul, Walmart's profits are marginal. Also, Paul, Walmart made billion-dollar profits last year. There is a difference between wisdom and intelligence. Paul is wise, no doubt, but he doesn't understand the kindergarten concept. So then let's go back to the first part, because these are two different ideas here. So he's saying that I contradicted myself by saying Walmart profits are marginal. Walmart made billion-dollar profits last year. And what I was saying, I didn't say Walmart profits are marginal. What I said was their profit margin is not that great. These retail stores and a lot of these stores do not have a high profit margin. So if you ever watch Shark Tank, and I never claimed to be some business genius, right? I never said I'm a great businessman, but I understand math and I'm smart, right? So I can understand these in somebody that doesn't have a great business mind. But if you watch Shark Tank, they ask them what their profit margin is. So what are they charging and what does it cost to make their product? And so that's the difference, is the profit margin, right? And so if they are it costs them $4 to make the product and they're selling for $100, well, they have a high percentage, they would have a 96% profit margin, which is huge, right? But if it costs them $4 and they charge $5, well, it's only a 20% profit margin. And so I understand basically those things. And as far as what I'm told, because I don't look at Walmart's books, but my understanding was these companies, these big ass companies, they don't have a very high profit margin because they're in very competitive markets. And so if Walmart makes billions of dollars in profits, it's because they have lots of sales, but their percentage on what they sell is very small profit margins. So if we were to boycott them, we could really screw them over, right? Because they don't have a large profit margin. So this person misrepresented what I said, right? Which is important to understand because they're trying to shit on me, and I don't even give a shit because I'm never claiming to be some brilliant businessman. But what I say is thoughtful. Like I'm not some just bonehead just talking shit, right? Paul, Walmart's profits are marginal. And Paul, Walmart made $1 billion of profits last year. And that's what Trump said. Of course they make billions of dollars. It's fucking Walmart. But their profit margins aren't that large, right? So, that's what I was saying, based in what other people say. It's not that I'm like claiming to be an expert businessman, but it's important to understand that there's a distinction here because the person is not aware of what I was saying. Like I could go back and listen to what I said. I don't know because it's not time-stamped by the person, right? But this was Trump saying that Walmart makes billions of dollars of profits, which they do. Of course they do. They're Walmart. The Walton family are a very rich family. The people who own Walmart. We all know that. It's a successful chain. And yet the profit margins aren't that great. And this was me talking about when the ad apocalypse happened in 2016, when Walmart and other big giant corporations pulled their ads from YouTube to try to censor us all and get YouTube some control over the content that they, all the shit that we're experiencing now as content creators is based in Walmart and these other companies going after YouTube to pressure them to only post their ads on certain kind of content. And so they were, if you were a person making videos shitting on Walmart, and then YouTube ran an ad about Walmart, which they often do. Like oftentimes I criticize something and my viewers say they ran an ad right after that about that product. And maybe that's their way of sort of doing, trying to, create some disinformation. Who knows? But the person is, trying to make it sound like I said something that contradicts itself, but it isn't, right? So then the person goes, Paul is wise, no doubt, but he doesn't understand the kindergarten concept that deleting and filtering your comment section hurts engagement and his money. So you think it's a kindergarten concept? that he doesn't understand that kindergarten concept that deleting and filtering your comment section hurts engagement and his money. Why don't you have a conversation with a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old that's in kindergarten and say, deleting and filtering your comment section hurts your engagement and money, and ask them what that means. So that is not a kindergarten concept, right? And so that's the first part. Paul, he doesn't understand the kindergarten concept that deleting and filtering your comment section hurts his engagement and his money. If this channel isn't about money, then why is he complaining about how much he makes all the time? I never said it wasn't about money, right? When did you guys ever say my channel wasn't about money? In fact, I've said the opposite. This is a job. I say it all the time. People come in and say, you should do this for free. They say that I'm somehow compromised, or other people who run ads or sell merch or do things are compromised and are shilling because they're doing it for money. But if I didn't do this for money, I couldn't make content every day. I work 6 to 8 hours. This is a fucking job. And if you don't understand it, it's, that's not my problem. But it's a job, and I expect to be compensated for it. And so nobody likes to do work, and this is work. I might enjoy it. It might be a good job. It might suit me well. And there's things I love about it. And there's things that go beyond the money and the content when I'm talking about spirituality and, promoting this idea that divinity is within you. These are all, that transcends it's something that I'm glad I'm able to do at my job. Spread what I think is the, only spirituality will save this world. This idea, I think, is essential for everybody. And I, generously share this information that I have and all these spiritual concepts that I got, for free in the Sajmark system, as a bonus to whatever else I do here, critiquing politics, making jokes, whatever it is, right? But it's taken me a long time. I had to hone my storytelling skill. The things that are the same kind of stuff that I do here, comedians do, and news, people who present the news do, podcasters, all these things, and they make far more money than I do, and I think I do a much better job. I think my show is better than their show in terms of, the quality of the content, right? But it's a job, right? And so here's the kicker about this thing. But I've never said it wasn't about money, because I wouldn't run ads if it wasn't about money, right? I need to get compensated because my time is worth something, my energy, and this is work. I'm doing a job here. And what person wants to lose, do a better job, spend the same amount of time doing a job and get less money for it and less views? And I feel like my videos have just gotten better. And the better they get, the less money I'm making and the less views I'm getting. So, it's, I'm evolving as a content creator, right? And I'm also, I got more experience, so I've honed my skills. I've gotten better at this job. And yet my money is less and my views are less and these things. So that's, I value the fact that I feel like my content is worth making, and that I feel like my videos are a lot better now than they used to be. I got millions of views on videos that I wouldn't even post now. They're not up to my standards. Back then, it was the best I could do. But now I would never repost those videos. My original videos, they're not, they're below my standard of what I considered content that I would deliver. I mean, even from 5 years ago. Like every video I watch of mine, an old video, I see some good things in it, but and I don't rewatch my videos all that much. I see some good things in it, but I'm like, oh, I would do this differently. Oh, I would, I've learned to make better quality content. And so nobody likes to work for free, and this is work. So it's silly to say that if this channel isn't about, whatever the person said here. Let me reread this part here. They say, here it is. He doesn't understand kindergarten concept that deleting and filtering the comment section hurts your engagement is money. If this channel isn't about money, then why is he complaining about how much he makes all the time? I barely complain about it. I mean, I could complain about it every day. I mean, every day I'm making content that is below my minimum. And I'm only asking for $100 a day, which is not that much, right? Which is, $30,000 something dollars a year. And so it isn't, that's below what I should be compensated. I used to make a lot more money here. $100 a day is not a lot of money. Most of you guys make more than $100 a day. But I'm, willing to do this job for $100 a day, and I'm not making that. And I lessened my standards. I said as soon as I got below $100 a day, I was going to have to look at doing something differently. But it's been so close to that. And, it isn't, most of my money's now coming from either the membership program or people who donate per video, which I'm grateful for. A lot of people have been doing that lately, which has been keeping the channel afloat. Because YouTube isn't paying me shit for ads. And now my view count has gone down, which has been going down for a while. And at some point, it's going to be like I'm talking to myself, right? Which I already am, right? All I do is talk to myself here. So, I could complain about it every day. It's not complaining. It's letting you guys know that something has to change. And, people can pray, bring consciousness to it, whatever, recommend it to their friends. I mean, it's not much anybody can do because of the way, but I just have to let people know there's people who depend on my channel and they, would hate to see me stop making videos, but I have to let people know what's going on. So I wouldn't call it complaining. And, this is a butthurt person because this is what the real key is. So all this stuff that they've said up until this point is just bullshit, right? It's not accurate. And then it says, I've never seen somebody so thin-skinned. Some Trumpers challenged him in the comments. Now we have to endure weeks of Trump bashing because his ego is hurt, which is a complete misrepresentation of what's happened, right? Like, none of this stuff is true. And that's the difference between me and this person. Because none of my talking about Trump has anything to do with commenters, unless I'm directly responding to a comment. Because the reality of it is, why would Trumpers comment in a negative way unless I was talking negatively about Trump? But it isn't being negative, it's being truthful. And this is the part of the video which is going to be in the title of this video. It's going to say something like, I hope you Trumpers remember that I'm the one who told you the truth about Trump. Because what I'm saying is the truth about him. You guys are delusional. And when Trump was doing things that made me laugh, when Trump was pissing off the liberals, when Trump's presidency was going in a way that, he would do good and bad things. But I don't give a shit about policies, right? And more than anybody else, it's in my belief system, my personal belief system, and my spiritual teachings of Sajmark system, that this current system has to be collapsed. It has to be destroyed, which I knew from a young age as a little kid. I knew it like 5%. Like, I didn't know what I knew, right? Which is often the case when you're a kid. Like, you see stuff and you really can't, you don't have the ability to conceptualize. Your brain isn't developed enough. You're too innocent. You don't really understand what you're seeing, but you see it. But I knew people were fucked up when I was a kid. I knew that society was fucked up. And then as I grew older, I knew it on a higher level. I understood it more and more because of past life experience, and I came in with this knowledge. And the knowledge has grown exponentially to where I see it and we all see it. This society is fucked, right? We all kind of see it. And we might say, some people might want to blame the deep state or the Democrats or liberal policies, but it's all of us going in the wrong fucking direction in a system that takes people away from the divinity within them, takes them away from their family, takes them away from what it is to be a natural human being, and the dumbing down, the idiocracy, and all of it, the degradation. And look at these two bozos of fucking candidates. and the lies and the mountain of lies that their candidacies have been built on. Joe Biden was run as a senile guy with Parkinson's and a fucking prostate cancer, and they ran him as president, for president. And he served as president while those things are going on. And the medications with all the side effects and his deterioration that everybody could fucking see, right? And they were covering it up, but we all could fucking see it because the guy was melting down right in front of us. And Trump is a complete scammer and a flim-flam artist. And he's been able to convince these dopes that he somehow has it on going on, right? So when Trump got elected, partially because of his fake assassination attempt, he would have got elected anyway, but that's the level of depravity he was willing to dive into. And members of the truth community didn't admit that they were seeing, that's what they just saw, was a WW style fake flag type of event that he was clearly fake as fuck, right? And other truthers didn't admit this. Of course, the Trumpers didn't admit it. And that was a huge problem because you can't call yourself a truther when you see something so fake and you don't call it out. Like, you have to question your integrity and why that happened. I mean, you could come back from it, but you have to, even privately, but more so publicly, have to explain, your realization of what a dope you were, right? Everybody gets duped, but fuck, right? And so, that was the beginning of the end for me for Trump. I mean, other than what he did at the end of his presidency, which was a debacle. And what he's done since then, all the targeting, all the bullshit that he says. We're going to get into that in a moment here. When Trump goes after Comey for some bullshit thing, making things up. Like this commenter is making things up about me, right? This isn't an accurate description of what they're seeing. They're just upset. They're accusing me of being butthurt when they're the butthurt ones, right? The Trumpers. Because, I said when Trump got elected, we didn't know what he was going to do. But I knew for one thing, he couldn't make America great again. He couldn't deliver on his promises because that can't be done. So he promised something that couldn't be done. So anyways, since then, as his presidency has unfolded, he clearly doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. Now, I'm not going to cover it in this video, but I already have this clip up that YouTube recommended, and Kristi Noem is being questioned. Now, she's in charge of the Department of Homeland Security, and she's being questioned what habeas corpus is. And she says something to the effect that it's the president's ability to send you in, to exile you. Like, you got to hear it. I'll show you it in my next video. But these people don't know what the fuck they're doing. And they're tearing down one aspect of a dysfunctional institution after another and throwing shit up against the wall. And Trump is clearly a dope. He's an idiot. He's a moron. I have more of this in my next video even. And he's shown himself, displayed himself in a way that every Trumper should realize, oh my God, we followed this guy and he's taking us over the cliff. But you're still going over the fucking cliff, holding on to this fat fuck, and he calls somebody fat. Like Trump has this thing where he talks about one of his business, one of his business associates who's overweight, and he's ribbing the guy about being fat for guys taking Ozempic. So it's hilarious. But Trump is just clueless. Like, he's a dope. He isn't a good businessman. He isn't a genius. And he's not curious. He doesn't know things. He's not knowledgeable. He's just an absolute fucking disaster. And you guys have followed him into this disastrous path, and you're going to follow him all the way because you can't, be truthful. You can't admit to what you're seeing. At what point do you jump off the Trump bandwagon? I mean, it's a disaster. And I understand because of your inability to face the truth, that every time I say something about Trump, you're going to get butthurt, leave a comment, not watch videos. But it doesn't, that's not going to stop me from saying these things because it's my fucking job. If my job is to tell the truth and I tell the truth in such a way, and I'm more delicate about it, but if I tell the truth in such a way that nobody watches me anymore, then so be it, right? Like, I feel like the truth has value. And it isn't because I'm the owner of the truth or what I say is God's word or what I say is the truth, but I do my best to tell the truth. And I don't give a shit about any of this stuff because on one level, I say something that no one else says that Trump is doing God's work because it's God's will to take down the system. I made a video and said, why would God want to save this system? And not one person could leave a comment saying why God would want to save this system. Because everybody knows we're fucked, right? You're begging for something that we don't deserve. You're begging to save something that you all know shouldn't be saved. And it sucks to hear because, the meaning of the system collapsing, the reality of the system collapsing is scary as fuck, right? For all of us, including myself. I mean, nobody's so prepared that they're like, oh my God, it's going to be great. There'll be no rule of law. There'll be no government. I mean, we're talking about, how a post-apocalyptic situation, no matter what it looks like, is going to be less good than it is now materially. But spiritually, it'd be great. And I say that all the time, right? So I have a totally different perspective than probably anybody else that talks about this. Like it's going to be hard for us all. That's obvious. But it's what we deserve, and it's what God wants. It's what, I don't want to say God because, God doesn't have a mind. But it's a divine plan. And it should be obvious to everyone that a corrective action is needed. But the don't be Trumpers who are, just delusional, just like the don't be Biden people who come here, if they watch my videos, it would be the same thing. And sometimes they do show up here. And, the don't be Democrats. But, there is no savior in the system. There's no good guys and bad guys. There's no movement to save the system because the whole system, if in its essence, is taking everybody in the wrong direction. Everybody's getting stupider. Everybody's getting weaker. Everyone's getting more entitled. Everybody's getting more selfish. Everyone's getting less natural. Everyone's disconnected from their family and from what's good about them, and most of all, the divinity within them. This is all true statements that all of you guys can see. So why should a system like that be saved? It's silly. And so it's not a popular view. No one wants to hear that shit, right? It's not entertaining. It's not, it's not what people are looking to hear. And it also means that you have to change and you have to work. And that's also the difference between me and these guys. Not just other truthers, but, people who are like Trumpers, because they think that the left has to change. You think you're just going to get rid of the immigrants, or you're going to, put in Trump's policies, and, the white people who run the, whatever, white Republicans or whatever they are going to, they're the good guys and they can make America great and everybody else is wrecking it and, whatever the fuck you believe, right? And that's not true. Everyone has to change, right? We all have to give up things that are bad for us. And, I have a much higher standard for myself than you guys have for yourselves because of the Sajmark system. Because every time I have a selfish thought or an egotistical thought or whatever, a negative thought, it's there in front of me because of the meditation. And any thought that's not in service of God, which is 99% of all human thoughts, all human feelings, all human pursuits, are things that are not in service of God. Very little do people do for God, and in the purest sense, not because they want, I want everyone to church see how good a person I am. I want the people to think that I'm a good person. That's still an egotistical reason for doing the right thing. I'm saying doing the right thing, even when you suffer for it, even when you get no credit for it, you're only doing it because you're serving God, and you're thwarting, you're fighting back against your egotistical desires, and pushing yourself to do the right thing, even in the face of, losing faith and having doubt and all the things that people do when they're on a spiritual path, right? So every time I act in a way that is self-serving or selfish or whatever it is, I'm aware of it. And I'm aware it's below what I should be doing. And I can make excuses and rationalize it, but I don't run away from the fact that, ultimately I have to do better. We all do at some point. We all have to devote all of our life's energy to serving God. And nobody really wants to do that. No ego wants to give your ability to just let your mind wander on negative things or addictive things or whatever it is, right? And so, I understand that there's a lower nature and that I'm working to embrace the higher nature, and it's a battle, and most of you guys are not engaged in that battle. Not really, right? And so it's not like I'm unaware of my lower nature. Like, when people say things that are that are true about me, I'm not like, oh yeah, that's not true. I know I know it myself, right? But you get these people who comment, and it's all about you being butthurt because I'm telling you the truth about Trump, and instead of being grateful to me for telling you a truth that you're following some guy who's a fucking complete disaster, and almost anybody with half a brain who isn't desperate could see through Trump, but it's your desperation and your worldview that you're not willing to cast aside, and it goes back to your religion and your racial identity and your right-wing identity and these things, that you believe that something that is so obviously fake is true. And anybody who tells you otherwise is, you're going to leave comments. And I'm not talking personally to any one of you. I'm talking to a collective people who are following somebody who obviously is a piece of shit, right? And, the rest of us can see it. And you're taking it personally, and you say personal things to me. And so me banning, going back to what this original thing this person said here, the person saying this, there's a difference between wisdom and intelligence. Paul is wise, no doubt, but he doesn't understand the kindergarten concept that deleting and filtering your comment section hurts engagement and his money. I don't tolerate your bullshit. I don't allow you guys to dump your shit on me. I expect you to leave. If you're not smart enough or you're not evolved enough to see that I have value, which you do because you want to watch my videos, you see that I have something going on here because you're complaining about, one thing that I talk about, that you have to endure me bashing Trump. It's me talking about what's going on right now, and that there's still people that support this guy. I mean, that's the only issue. Trump is going to do whatever he's going to do until he's stopped. And he's doing God's work, which is bringing down the system, which is, not intentionally. He isn't consciously doing God's work. I don't know how much of it he's being rewarded for. He's playing a role, maybe positively. Sometimes people have to do destructive work, and they get rewarded spiritually because they're assigned for that work. They're here to play a villain. Oftentimes higher developed souls are here to play a villain, and, for whatever reason, for things that have to be done that are destructive in nature. That's between him and God, right? But my job is to look at what's going on in the world and comment on it. And right now, Trump is dominating everything. And the Hollywood stuff and all these things pale in comparison, like the P. Diddy thing and the rest of it. And so, I mean, for me, I don't give a shit. I could talk about just the positive, which is spirituality, and nobody would listen. It's you guys' fault. It's everyone's fault that they want drama and they want the negative. Because people don't want to hear what they should do. They just want to laugh at and mock what they see that shouldn't be done, right? They want to complain, they want the negative, and so that's what I cover here. And I realized that first on, I didn't want to cover celebrities. I barely wanted to cover politics. This channel started off with me and my family homesteading, and occasionally I talk about some spiritual things, and very infrequently I'd make a video about some movie I saw or something. I only made like 3 or 4 of them in like 7 years, right? And I barely covered celebrity culture. Most of my videos were me shooting things that were going on the farm, like I do farm updates. I said I was going to do one before, but this video is going to be too long. And so, it's Trumpers' inability to see what's the truth. And they're coming to a place where the truth is being told about Trump, and they don't like it. But they see that I'm right about everything else but this. I said Joe Biden had dementia in 2019. I said Trump was a scumbag piece of shit years and years ago. I said that he was much more likable to me, and I liked the way that he tortured the liberals. That was funny. That was good. And the way that he was disrespecting the presidency, I liked that as well, because I always thought that was a sham. But there was a time where Trump became completely compromised, and he was always compromised, but when COVID hit, he was a disaster. And he's been a disaster ever since. And now he just sucks. He's not funny anymore. He's like more about laughing at him than laughing with him. And then the rest of it, right? And he's one of the horsemen of the apocalypse. And yes, he's doing God's work, but not in a way that he's doing it in a dickish way. Anyways, let's move on. Let me show you more of this, what I'm talking about here. And let me say this one last thing about what I was just talking about. none of this stuff is personal to me. Like some of these things affect me personally. Some of it affects all of us personally. But, I understand it's God's will for the system to come down. I've known that, like I said, since I was a kid, and it's just become more and more clear over time. It's also in the teaching of the Sajmark system. And what I didn't know, which I got, was the blessing from doing, Gratefulness meditation, Sajmark system of meditation, is that when the system comes down, that there is this potential for people to go up to a higher level and advance on a vibrational level, on a, like a conscious level, which is, the much more interesting part. But nobody gives a shit about that, which is even sadder, right? Which even sucks more. It's depressing to see people who can't see what is so easily seen about Trump, right? And once you realize Trump isn't going to save you, then what do you have? You have God. Once you realize that America isn't going to save you and support you, what do you have? You have God. You're dependent on God, right? And that's what needs to happen. So me talking about this is a blessing for all of you, because you're going to realize it at one point or another. There'll be a time where you guys are like, oh, that guy was right. Or just, you might not say that. You might not remember me because you'll be, eating fucking garbage out of a garbage can. It doesn't mean anything to me to be right, but it's there for people to see or not, right? And so I'm not saying this thing personal. And, it's like somebody talking to an addict and saying, you're an addict, and the person getting mad, right? I mean, when you tell somebody they're addicted to something and they can't deal with that because they don't want to use those words because they don't want to give up what they're addicted to because they're addicted to it, right? And the way that you guys love Trump in a way that's unhealthy, in a cultish way. So anyways, Aaron Burnett here.
Complacency, saying that Trump's tariffs right now are extreme. So here he is, JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon.
Even if these are low levels, they stay where they are today, that's pretty extreme tariffs. My own view is where people feel pretty good because you haven't seen an effect of tariffs. The market came down 10%, it's back up 10%. I think that's an extraordinary amount of complacency.
An extraordinary amount of
that guy's a piece of shit, but he's a Trump. He loves Trump. Jamie Dimon has praised Trump's policies in his first term, and he doesn't mind a little bit of tariffs. Anyways.
Complacency. And Dimon is really pointing out a simple fact, which is that tariffs of 30% on China, 10% on the rest of the world, on top of whatever was existing already, is massive. It is extreme. And right now, the stock market is trading literally as if none of these tariffs exist, back to the way it traded before anything was even announced. But the reality of it is, of course, is prices are going up and some items are not being restocked. Within the past hour, we learned that imports into America's largest port dropped 30% in the first week of May alone. And the Port of Los Angeles says that the drop for all of May they expect will be a massive 25%. Just put that another way, maybe it hits home more strongly. That is a quarter of all imports into the largest port in America. And for Dimon and other leaders in the American economy, the problem is even bigger.
We have huge deficits. We have what I consider complacent almost complacent. The central banks think they're omnipotent. And
it isn't Trump's fault that we have huge deficits. He added to the deficits. Here's this thing here. Let's move to this. This isn't Trump's fault or Biden's fault or Clinton's fault. It isn't Obama's fault. There is nothing that any president could do because debt is wealth. If we paid off all the debt, like there was no debt at all here in the world, we would be impoverished because, all the currency that we use is based in debt. I mean, the majority of currency is within the derivatives market, which Jamie Dimon's Chase Bank held $200 trillion at one point, $200 trillion worth of derivatives market debt. And at one point it was over $2 quadrillion. Now it's at $700 trillion. It goes back and forth. But that's, that's people betting against bad loans and other things, right? The credit default swaps and all that other stuff that they did. And so everything is debt. Our currency is debt. And debt is, these big corporations and countries traded debt. And so the debt is massive, and yet it's our wealth. It's crazy. It's fucking ass backwards. It's inverted. It's devil. It's demonic. It's inverted, like the devil inverts things. The people think about the devil, right? It's inverted because debt is value, debt is currency, and that's nobody's fault. And if you get rid of that, then the whole system collapses. You have an economic system based on something that's inverted.
To all of us. And Team Trump is now blaming Biden for America's debt problem and the Moody's downgrade of U.S. debt.
We didn't get here in the past 100 days. It's the Biden administration and the spending that we have seen over the past 4 years.
Again, that's just bullshit because there was 16 trillion, whatever it was, $16 trillion in debt, $18 trillion when Trump took over. Maybe more. We were in the 20s. I don't know. They've added $3 trillion a year, and so you can do the math, right? When I first started watching this back in 2014, I think it was $14 trillion, $15 trillion worth of debt, and it's doubled since then, since I started looking at the national debt clock. Again, I'm not an economic person, but I understand that this is how the system works. Here's Trump here.
Per vehicle to more than $2,000 per vehicle. Trump will soon be unable to strong-arm or threaten companies from telling consumers why prices are going up if you start having them across the board like that. So far, he's publicly...
You get the idea, right? She gets into him saying, eat the terrorists. But, like she covers financial stuff here. We've seen some of these guys on here. And this is CNN being able to do real news because Trump doesn't have an answer. The problem here is Trump doesn't know that the system's fucked. Like I think maybe everybody else, or at least their handlers, know that you can't fix the system. You just pretend it isn't going in a way. Like when Elon Musk came out and said that we have a $1 trillion worth of interest alone, that we have $8 trillion in expenses, including $1 trillion in interest. And he didn't say this, but we have $5 trillion worth of income in terms of tax revenue. And it's going to go down with Trump's tax cuts. And so the debt is going to increase even more so. Trump is wanting to do all kinds of things like a military parade that costs $900 million or something, or some $90 million or something like that, I don't know. Either way, it even costs $1 million just for a military parade. Like, it's just fucking Trump, right? And I'll cover that a little bit in my next video. But, it's all just a fucking joke, right? It's all just it's a scam. It's a flim-flam scam that's gone on to where billions of people are depending on this demonic economic system. And when it collapses, we don't have a plan B. But let's go to this other piece here. So I want to wrap this one up here. Like I said, I want to drop the Biden compilation. But just understanding the Biden deception, the Trump deception, the American deception, eventually the truth comes out. And when the truth comes out, you're fucked with it. When you've been living a lie, you've been doing things that you know you shouldn't be doing, and then there's a divine correction. And when it's global, when it's everybody, like it's a big one, right? We have big corrections coming here. So here it is.
Well, new this morning, President Trump is accusing former FBI Director James Comey, who he had fired in his first administration, of threatening him. Comey posted a photo of seashells spelling out the numbers 8647, prompting swift backlash. Alabama GOP Senator Tommy Tuberville, for example, called the post beyond despicable and said James Comey must face consequences. Comey has since deleted the photo and posted a statement, quote, I posted earlier a picture of some shells I saw today on a beach walk, which I assumed were a political message. I didn't realize some folks associate those numbers with violence. It never occurred to me, but I oppose violence of any kind.
Of course you knew what it was. You were just posting those things. You didn't know what it fucking meant. Like, what an asshole. Like, the thing is that you weren't threatening him. It was like 86 didn't mean killing him. I mean, he knew that it meant 86, but like...
So I took the post down.
President Trump says this about Comey's explanation. Listen to this.
Exactly what that meant. A child knows what that meant. If you're the FBI director and you don't know what that meant assassination.
No, fuck you. See, that's what I want to end this with. It didn't mean that. Trump is constantly complaining about being taken out of context, as all these people are. Every celebrity, every famous person is taken out of context. And I didn't think it meant assassination. I think it meant get rid of him. You know, like the way that when you say 86 in a restaurant, and they say 86, the clam chowder, and people say, I want clam chowder, we say we don't have it anymore. It's been 86, right? We're out of it. And so it has multiple meanings. It didn't mean assassinate him. Now, you could say that was possibly the meaning of the people on the beach, but they didn't mean it in a real way. It's not a planned assassination. Somebody found some seashells and said 8647. Does that mean that that person should be investigated? That person on the beach that said that? All the people that hate Trump? And again, he has a fake assassination, this bullshitting piece of shit here, right? That fake assassination attempt that he did. And so, you know, this is him being a real piece of shit because of all the things that he said that he was like, well, I didn't mean that. And sometimes he totally meant that. I mean, he's flat lying about it. But all the stupid shit he has said over the years. And I'm going to show you a bunch of stupid shit in my next video. And so for him to come out and say this.
And it says it loud and clear. Now, he wasn't very competent, but he was competent enough to know what that meant. And he did it for a reason, and he was hit so hard. Because people like me, and they like what's happening with our country. Our country's become respected again, and all this. And he's calling for the assassination of the president.
Obviously, he apologized and said he did.
Well, he apologized because he was hit. Look, he's a very bad.
What do you want to see happen? What do you want to see happen?
I don't want to take a position on it because that's going to be up to Pam and all of the great people.
Oh, I wonder what Pam's going to do.
I will say this: I think it's a terrible thing.
Again, you know, that's just Trump being full of shit. All right, so I'll actually lead off with this as I get into the other stuff in my next, video on all these things. I have to reorganize those tomorrow. I want to continue on with this. But, this is what's up, right? You have a guy who's just an absolute piece of shit, a lying piece of shit, who complained about being taken out of context, about being mistreated, about, all of his bullshit that he did. A lot of it was intentional, and a lot of it is just lying and him just talking shit and just being a buffoon. But he said lots of horrific things. And if they're going to go after Comey saying this, like they're going to investigate him and go after him like he's not plotting this. That's not a fucking code word. He took a picture of somebody's shells on the beach. He shouldn't have posted it. He's a moron. But that's all it is, right? It's a moron doing moronic things. Or maybe some guy looking for attention. Or maybe they're in on it. Maybe it's a whole thing. But either way, his assassination attempt was bullshit. And the rest of it's bullshit, right? Trump is just full of shit. And, and the people who follow him, I at this point, I don't understand it. I know lots of other people in the truth community are bailing on Trump now. My wife and I listened to a little, the guy, Kurt Metzger, Kerp from Kyle Dunnigan. And, he's a little bit more of a truther than most of these other people. And yet they say stupid shit like they call things real that are clearly fake. And, but he's turning on Trump. I think that guy he works with is turning on Trump, that Jimmy Dore. Like now they all realize that Trump, they had hope and now Trump is, I think this is happening. You guys know more than I do. You guys who watch other truthers. But the reality of it is it's just clear what's happening here. The guy can't do what he promised. That's the very simplistic aspect of it. Trump or no one else, Trump and everybody else cannot fix something that God doesn't want to be fixed and something that's bad for us. If we understood what we would be like without this system, we would be like, oh my God, we'd be so much better off. And, I think it's fairly clear when we look at our kids and these other generations and we're like, oh my God, they're so lost. We look at the youth and they're so much worse off than we were. And they know it, right? And they don't know anything else. Like they didn't have the great upbringing we had compared to what they have of real life events. They're growing up, spending most of their time in the cyber world. And, and the time they don't spend it, it's the culture and everything's so fucked up. And they're just, they're so screwed, right? I mean, we're supposed to leave the world, a better world for our kids, and we haven't done that. And that's on all of us. And that was on our parents too, because we've been all going in the wrong direction. And really, we don't have much of an option. No matter what we do, we can't fight what's happening here. Anyways, let me add that thing about Biden at the end here. It's a little bit long. If you already saw it, of course, there's no reason to watch it twice. But for those people who didn't, and people might watch this in the future, I want to have this comprehensive idea of the cover-up of Biden's, his poor health and the documentation that I and other people did. And we saw this for years of his deterioration. And now, we know that he has this cancer. And then, Trump, on the other hand, is, in the same way, just an opposite way. The Trump deception, this idea that he was a genius businessman that plays 5D chess, which is clearly not the case. All right, so like I said, I'm gonna sign out here, but after I sign out, I'm gonna add that clip if people want to watch it. Only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount, definitely important for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful. Okay, so I have these compilations of things, and I reuse. Sometimes I have to find a video clip. I've a bunch of these video clips within this compilation. I've had to find, search for, look for, watch over and over again. And I made this long video about, some of it had to do with Joe Biden's Parkinson's and his mental collapse, his dementia, whatever else happened to him. And today, after I made the video, this was a part of this video that I posted today's Sunday, May 18th. I found out, or it was announced, that Joe Biden has stage 9 out of 10 prostate cancer. And he's probably going to be dead by the time I would use any of these things. And so maybe there'll be, no need for this to exist. But either way, I'm saving all of it here. And so it's a long compilation that's over an hour and a half long. It doesn't have everything that I have on Joe Biden. It doesn't, and I only have a fraction of all the stuff that's out there. But it's pretty, it's enough. So here's the compilation of various Joe Biden mental issues and the things that went along with it. It starts off with recent release of Joe Biden audio, which, I'll explain all these things as it goes through the compilation. Anyways, here it is. Okay, so I just ate breakfast, and I talked to my wife about the tariff things. I'm going to say one more thing about that, and then segue into this Joe Biden audio tape leak. And it just shows you how fucked we are. It's just so bad, right? But first of all, with the tariffs, it would indicate that Trump doesn't know who Walmart is. Like he even said, you guys made billions in profits. They're there to make profits. They treat their employees bad. They sell horrible, toxic shit. Death in a cart, cancer in a cart, right? People walking around with cancer and heart disease in their cart in terms of their foods, processed foods, their shitty clothes, the vibrations and energy. I'm pretty sure, these places these box stores can be converted into military bases. There's all kinds of, there's all these things that are, whatever the energy that is. I can't stand being in Walmart. I like Costco, but there's something, some of these other stores I can go in. And as soon as I get into Walmart, I want to leave. They're emitting low frequency shit just to wear you down. I don't know what it is, right? And it's just a depressing thing. If you look around at the people there, no matter what you want to say about, America and the news media and the powers that be and religion and all these things, all the institutions and all the hope that you have to survive. You go into Walmart, you look at the people and you're like, holy fuck, we're screwed. How can you not say that? How can you not go into Walmart and say, wow, we're doing fucking great. Look at these winners. Look at these Mensa candidates, right? There's some kind of thread, I think on Reddit or one of these, probably multiple places, and it's pictures of weird people at Walmart. The worst of the worst, but it's just everybody. we're not doing well. And it's just been, it's getting worse over time. We're going in the wrong fucking direction. We're de-evolving, right? We're less than on every level. And that's the key indicator to a collapse. A collapse, if the people are getting less and less natural, less and less functioning, physically weaker, more entitled, all the bad trending categories, then your system is collapsing. Your system is created to, should be created to bring out the best in you. If it's bringing out the worst, then the system itself will collapse because the people will collapse, right? Self-destructive, right? If you looked at this as a business or any kind of organization, as a team, as a whatever it is, you looked at the youth, you looked at the people, and you're like, oh my God, we're fucked. Like, we're totally fucked. This is what we got to work with. This is our fucking, this is what we are as a species. And the very nature of Walmart is greed. And China is greed, right? China isn't doing this, we just want to try to make Trump's policies work. We just want to make these tariffs work. Nobody fucking asked for the tariffs. Walmart didn't, give you money and say, hey, put a bunch of tariffs on China. You think Walmart wants this? No. You think China wants it? No. You think they're going to help you? Fuck no. They're not going to help you. Why do they help you? And it just shows Trump's narcissism, right? We're trying to do something special here. We're watching you guys, and so are your customers, Fucking total twit, right? I can't believe people are surprised by this, and they're not even. I'm sure there are a lot of Trumpers just think he's doing a great job. Yeah, Walmart, screw Walmart, But where was Trump when Walmart was, part of the group of people that were censoring YouTube by not running ads on YouTube because of some bullshit thing where they're trying to censor us, particularly the truth community, and then everyone else in general. They're trying to get a hold to pressure YouTube to, do what they're doing with ads, right? Which has screwed all of us. And I said we should boycott Walmart and McDonald's and Coke and all these things. Like, YouTubers should have all went out there. I knew it wasn't going to happen, but I made a video, and my videos don't reach that many people and whatever. But I said this is the one time we could boycott. If you could take down like 5% of Walmart's profits by getting a boycott or just, do brand damage. If every YouTuber went out there and said, this is a list of people that are fucking us with the ad apocalypse, the apocalypse, which was what it's called, it's 2016. And, the PewDiePie was involved. Like, he had 12 million, followers or something crazy back then. He's many more now. If he came out and said, let's boycott all these people that are screwing us, then, that would have changed everything. Maybe not. Like, who knows? The corporations might not have responded to boycotts, but it was our last chance to do something. And now Trump, so many years later, is going to get into it with Walmart, but not about saving people or making America great again or making America first or, valuing his people that got him elected, many of them who are alternative media people. No, fuck those guys, right? Fuck all you guys, but they're trying to do this to me, and I'm Trump, and they don't do shit like this to Trump. And so there's that. So the other piece is CNN and MSNBC are trying to walk back their support for Biden. Like, that was coming out. And it's like at a good time because there's Trump news. And Jake Tapper's written this book, Original Sin, with Axios, which is another liberal leading thing. And they're trying to make it like they're breaking the fucking story that Joe Biden was senile, when me and other people were saying in 2019, oh, this guy's fucked in the head, right? And I gave diagnostic criteria based in, my years of working. I have a master's in counseling. He had clearly had dementia, which is later I learned it's Parkinson's. That great video I showed you guys of the MSNBC where they interview a doctor who works specifically with Parkinson's, because a Parkinson's doctor came to the White House like 8 times and they tried to pan it off on some young soldier, which was some bullshit thing. Some guy who was a neurologist who specialized in Parkinson's. So MSNBC mistakenly brought a guy on for a doctor of Parkinson's. He said, yeah, everyone who's a Parkinson's doctor knows this guy's got Parkinson's. Just look at him. He's demonstrating all the symptoms. And he didn't get it yesterday, right? So I'll say some of these things again in a moment. But MSNBC and CNN are trying to walk this back. But what's interesting about it, I got the clips off the TV. There's times I'll watch a little bit of news while I'm eating breakfast, and other meals or whatever. I'll watch 5 minutes of news or something just to see what ideas for videos and things. And they're always something. And sometimes I watch something that's, something I'm going to use, and they put it on YouTube. It's something that they put on social media, on Twitter or YouTube. The show itself has its own, like each show has their own, most of them have their own Twitter account, and they'll put some of their clips on Twitter. And then CNN, YouTube will put some of the clips on YouTube. But they didn't put any of these clips that I'm about to show you on YouTube. And when I turned on the TV this morning to eat breakfast, I looked at MSNBC and CNN. CNN had Van Jones and David Axelrod talking about what they have to do to start a new Democratic Party. Like the Democratic Party's in shambles. And of course they have their own personal agenda or whatever way, because they all have their different angles. Like the Democrats the Republicans and the Democrats aren't a cohesive group of people. So some of them are more liberal, like the Democrats, some of them are more liberal, some of them are more centrist. And they're all going to say, yeah, we have to go full liberal now. We have to go full, whatever demographic they belong to, right? They're all going to try to push it in their direction, saying, oh, we should have done it my way the whole time. And none of them have the answer, right? Like none of them have the answer. I mean, someone's going to get elected just because someone gets elected. It's either going to be a Democrat or a Republican, but it's not because they're doing a good job, right? Trump did a good job of selling a bunch of bullshit to a bunch of dumb fucks, right? But that's, hopium smoking people. But other than that, there's not any winning message out there. And the message that Trump sold was a load of horseshit, which we now know, right? But CNN and Jake Tapper particularly are going after Biden in a way that's just so icky, but they're not putting it on social media. So they're doing it on their network, and I've been doing it on for a couple of days because these audio tapes of Biden's conversation with the district attorney or the lawyers representing the whatever governmental agency was looking into Joe Biden's mishandling of classified docs. And let's get into it here because it's self-explanatory.
To release the 2024 report saying that while he believed Biden mishandled classified documents, he did not think a jury would convict him because the president came across as, quote, a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory, a quote that caused the White House to explode with fury. Let's get right to CNN.
So somehow I turned on Jake Tapper right when this was happening. So he was like ending his show. I don't know what it was. I don't know why I was watching it because it's a later show. Either way, there was these audio tapes that they just released, right? The Justice Department, District Attorney or whatever. And I'm going to show you two different things, a day after they had gone through them. But there's two clips that are significant that they showed. I'm going to show you the clips, and then I'll comment on them the second time I show it to you. It sounds confusing, but it's not. Anyway, here it is.
Have now released this. So again, we haven't heard this ourselves. Axios has now released this audio, but it's important, Jake, for us to know exactly how the president sounded in those interviews, and how and why Robert Hur made those conclusions.
Yeah, and one of the things that's very clear if you read the transcripts is that President Biden really was having significant trouble with dates. We're ingesting the audio from Axios as we speak. We just got a soundbite. Let's listen.
Trump gets elected in November of 2017. 2016. All right. So, why not 2017?
That's when you left office, January 2017.
Okay. But that's when Trump gets sworn in.
Right, correct.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm going to comment on what he said there, right? I'm going to show you this again with the gumball guys coming up, the second report the next day. So this was Friday night. This was breaking, 5, 6, and whatever it was when Jake Tapper shows on. And maybe later on that night. Maybe I think I was watching YouTube. I'm not sure what's happening. But then, they have this kind of big thing. Jake Tapper's just published this book, and they're giving it mild coverage on CNN because they want to distance themselves. They don't want to like pretend that Biden and the Democratic Party didn't implode, but of course Trump's imploding right now with the tariffs. And so they can't, they can't pretend that he just didn't like shit himself during his presidency, especially the last year. That's what they want to focus on. Like they're all pretending like this just happened. Like there wasn't signs of dementia when they full-throatedly backed him in 2019 and 20. When the guy had dementia then, like he was, obviously deteriorating, which anybody could see. Like you had to be, I'm wantonly not seeing it. But they're pretending it just got so bad the last year. No, it was bad all the time. It was probably bad when he was vice president. Like this just didn't happen. He had Parkinson's, and it takes a while for all these things to develop to as bad as it was at the end. And he was showing signs of this the whole time. He should have never been elected in the first place.
Tapes October 2023.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is what, 2017, 18, that period?
Yes, sir.
Remember, in this time frame, my son is either been deployed or is dying. And so it was, and by the way, there were still a lot of people at the time when I got out of the Senate that were encouraging me to run in this period.
So that's the part that I was talking about. He's not clear of dates. He's not clear on when Bo died, when Donald Trump won the presidency, when he lived in Virginia. And this is what Robert Hur heard, and why it was so significant is so few people were able to have access to President Biden like this for hours at a time when he was showing this less than optimally functioning Joe Biden.
See, this is where it gets silly because, I knew in 2019, I'm like, oh my God, this guy's fucked, right? I had seen Joe Biden in various times over the years. I wasn't a big news watcher as a young person, but I'd seen him. I'd seen him talking, and he was a good speaker for what he was, right? He pretended to have this tough guy, blue-collar thing, but he wasn't that. He was basically, his first real job was a lifeguard, but he was elected as a senator at 29 years old. He spent 50 years in doing this kind of bullshit that they call doing service, but, he was making premium dollars, corrupt fuck, right? And just, kind of a gaffe magnet. He said stupid shit. He did stupid shit. But the guy had run for president in 1998 or one of the 80s, 88 or something like that. He ran for president, and he plagiarized. He got caught plagiarizing. He just lifted people's life stories. And so he had to withdraw in disgrace. He wasn't going to win anyway. He went to the Democratic nomination. He ran for president 3 more times. And he didn't succeed because people knew this guy was a bozo. And then, they make bozos vice presidents. Think about the amount of vice presidents that end up becoming president, other than like a death or assassination or something like that. And so it's not a direct pathway to the White House. Most of the vice presidents don't become president. And oftentimes they're boobs, Dan Quayle, Joe Biden, they're like Ed McMahon to, Johnny Carson, like some guy who's supposed to go out there and like be a dope to make the president look good. And that's what Joe Biden was good at, being a dope, right? And he did a lot of gaffes and he started to deteriorate. And Jake Tapper is making it sound like, well, these people had access to him and they knew. This isn't new shit. Joe Biden not remembering dates. This isn't something new. In the campaign, when he had the campaign during the primaries, remember they closed the country down for the presidential campaign. He was, he'd go out in a car and people would be sitting in their cars and he'd give a 10-minute speech and they called it campaigning, right? And so, there were some highlights I showed you of all the things. I have a whole, Joe Biden. Well, let me see if I have my Joe Biden meme collection. It's not even, it's just, this is old stuff that I collected. Greetings, brothers and sisters. This is a compilation of some of the gaffes, things that JoJo has said. Just a few of them. I don't think I have all of them, but just some of the gaffes that I've covered. And I know there's things I don't know about, and there's future gaffes. But as of December 2019, these are JoJo's gaffes, right? And, yeah, enjoy them.
We got to recognize that kid wearing a hoodie may very well be the next poet laureate and not a gangbanger. Ladies and gentlemen, there are too many black men, and I might add women, in prison. Stay in fact, anyway, my time's up. I'm sorry.
I was ready to prostitute myself. And
if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. We choose truth over facts. A big portion of it called Crimea. Right. He's saying that it was President, my boss, it was his fault.
This is President, my boss, is his fault.
Do not pin it on me, sir. Please, sir. Do not.
Look, why should voters give you another chance?
Because it got done before. Oh, no. It's your professionalism that I respect. Because it got done before. I'm the only one up here who's ever beat the NRA. They have every problem coming to them. We have to make sure that every single child does, in fact, have 3, 4, and 5-year-olds go to school, not daycare, school. We bring social workers into homes of parents to help them deal with how to raise their children. Play the radio, make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night, the phone, make sure the kids hear words. A kid coming from a very poor school, or a very poor background, hear 4 million words fewer spoken by the time they get there. There's so much no, I'm going to go like the rest of them do, twice over, okay?
Look at this creepy guy touching her hair, snoozling her.
Okay, right.
Just how creepy is this? Goes on forever. This
guys, look up the Senate photographer up
this
top.
creepy MF. Get the porn cam. Get the grope cam up there.
Can I move just alone?
No, you frickin' creepy sniffer, groper, snoozler. No, you cannot. I'm saying no. Jessica cannot have a picture with you alone, you fucking creep.
Dad's going to stand pretty close.
Dad's going to have to stand pretty close. Dad's going to have to stand pretty close. And they laughed, right? Because they don't trust this creepy MNFer with the daughter, and yet they're just serving her up here. Because, I've talked about this before. It's an awkward situation where Biden's in control, right? In terms of there's all these cameras, and if somebody speaks out and says, knock it off, you frickin' creep, they're put in an awkward social situation, right? And he's like, no, I'm not doing anything wrong, right? I'm just trying to be affectionate. I'm just reaching out to people.
She's a lovely child.
What he said there is, if I was younger, I would switch parties. So she's a Republican. So he's saying that, she would make him switch parties. And her dad, how fucked up is this, right? This is 2015 when he's vice president swearing these people in. And he did it over and over again. I have a little bit more here, I think. But I don't have the full thing. I made a whole video on this. The whole, multiple young women, some young boys, some moms, he's just totally handsy and inappropriate. In a situation where they can't call him on it because they're having their special day getting sworn in. And he's taking advantage of that. He's just a true creep. Again, this is when he was vice president.
By the way, if I was young, I'd choose parties. I went to pin him. I said, sir, I don't want the damn thing. Do not pin it on me, sir. Please, sir. Do not do that. I went to pin him. I said, sir, I don't want the damn thing. Do not pin it on me, sir. Please, sir. Do not do that. I went to pin him. I said, sir, I don't want the damn thing. Do not pin it on me, sir. Please, sir. Do not do that.
So here's an example of some more of his snoozling and groping and nuzzling behaviors. It's just really creepy, this guy, right? And there's more gaffes coming, spoken gaffes. But this behavior, this guy should be unelectable, right? And it's just right there in front of everybody.
And by the way, you know, I sit on the stand and it get hot. I got hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They'd look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap. Increasing exponentially. Top one.
Exponentially.
2% have done exponentially better. The only African-American woman that ever been elected to the United States Senate. A whole range of people.
No,
my point is
that's not true. The other one is here.
I said the first. I said the first.
You didn't say the first. Let's go back. You said the only. He said, I said the first. I said the first. Look at Kamala Harris getting a big belly laugh here.
African-American elected. First. So my point is,
he's fucking senile.
the reasons I was picked.
But the biggest one is he forgot or tried to lie about something that he said literally seconds earlier, right? He says only, and he goes back and tries to change history right there and says, no, I said first. I said first, not only.
Caucus, the only African-American woman that ever been elected to the United States Senate.
He just said only. It was only. We heard it, Joe.
A whole range of people.
No,
my point is
that's not true. The other one is here.
Look at his confused look.
I said the first.
He literally just said only, and he got a confused look on his face like, oh, and then he tried to rearrange reality and change it, what he said, from only to first. I mean, it's just right there. Like, he's confused. Watch his confused face here.
The only African-American woman that ever been elected to the United States Senate. A whole range of people.
No,
my point is
that's not true.
True, Joe.
I said the first. I said the first African-American elected.
Corn pop.
We're allowed to. There was a 3-meter board, and you fell off sideways. You landed on the darn cement over there.
He's so funny.
And Corn Pop was a bad dude.
Corn Pop was a bad dude.
And he ran a bunch of bad boys.
And he ran with a bunch of bad boys. All right, remember Corn Pop. This guy's the phenom, right? He's the phenom of gaffes, inappropriate behaviors, all of it. And I didn't even get into his no malarkey tour, right? Because that's a part of it. He has a no malarkey tour going on. And so, well, I guess that's here. And so you have this no malarkey guy, and he's kind of full of malarkey, right? And so, yeah, this is JoJo, and how could this guy possibly win the presidency? Like, it would mean America's... Okay, so here are some more memes. Once, I saved them all under Jojo Magoo. I looked under Joe Biden, then I realized I was only calling him Jojo Magoo back then. But here's some more gaffes and memes and things that he did that showed his senility.
I've done some dumb things, and I'll do dumb things again. So, ladies and gentlemen, I've been dumb.
This is a guy who doesn't know much about anything. Let's go, Brandon. I agree.
Second, I've asked Congress to increase my dosage of talkie pills.
I've done some dumb things, and I'll do dumb things again. So, ladies and gentlemen, I've been dumb.
False flag operations, and since then we established a liberal world order, and there's gonna be a new world order out there. My name is Joe Biden. I'm Barack Obama's vice president, and I'm Jill Biden's husband. My name is Joe Biden. I'm Jill Biden's husband.
My name is Joe Biden. I'm Jill Biden's husband. You know, like a granddad joke. It's not even a dad joke. It's a granddad joke. And, well, let me show you this. He stole it, right? He plagiarized it from JFK, so it isn't even his original joke.
I do not think it altogether inappropriate to introduce myself to this audience. I am the man who accompanied Jacqueline Kennedy to Paris, and I've enjoyed it.
I am Jill's husband.
Hello.
As I said many times before, I'm Jill's husband. Hey, everyone. I'm Jill Biden's husband. My name's Joe Biden. Please sit down. I'm Jill's husband and Naomi Biden's grandfather.
So I have a few more things to add here. This guy, Joe Biden, challenges to a push-up contest. He calls him fat, like that's his name. And, he loses it here. And people knew this. He was like, this is not appropriate. But they didn't call him on it. I mean, all the other things they've showed you, some of them when he was vice president, there was all these things.
That's your son over there. Get a job and work for a gas company that he had no experience with gas or nothing. In order to get access to the public, for the president. So you're selling access to the president just like he is. So
You're a damn liar, man. That's not true. And no one.
You're a damn liar, man. That's not true. Of course, we know Hunter Biden sold access, right? Like that was,
No one has ever said that? No one has heard that? No? You see it on the TV. No, I know you do. And by the way, that's why I'm not sedentary. I get up and no, let him go. Let him go. Look, the reason I'm running is because I've been around a long time and I know more than most people know. And I can get things done. That's why I'm running. And you want to check my shape on, let's do push-ups together here, man. Let's run. Let's do whatever you want to do.
Okay, so this is why they couldn't let him campaign. In 2020, they shut him down after they rigged the primary for him because they knew he couldn't do it. Like he was falling apart here. Some guy, confronts him about his corrupt son, and then he gets all defensive.
Number two, no one has said my son has done anything wrong, and I did not on any occasion. And no one has ever said it. Not
I didn't
one.
say you were doing anything wrong.
You said I set up my son to work in an oil company. Isn't that what you said?
No, he said gas company. And he said that, they gave him a job to buy access to the president because he's old himself. The guy asking the question.
Keep your words straight, Jack.
Keep your words straight, Jack.
But I hear on MSNBC.
You don't hear that on MSNBC. You did not hear that at all.
Yeah, because they're in our pocket. They're in our back pocket.
You heard. Look, okay, I'm not going to get in an argument with you, man.
Well, I don't want to.
Well, yeah, you do, but look, fat, look, here's the deal.
Look, fat, look. He calls him fat, right? I mean, number of things to get him canceled. This 2019, and he's running for, this should have been, all the other candidates should have went after him for this. Like, none of them did. Like, he's senile, right? You can't fucking have a civil conversation. He's not capable of doing this. Walking away, turning his back to the crowd and to the guy, calling him fat, challenging to a push-up contest.
Here's the deal.
It looks like you don't have any back over Trump.
Again, he can't come up with anything. He's struggling to come up with what to say here, right? I mean, there's all these things he's showing cognitive decline. Anger is one of the things that happens when people have dementia. They get angry because they get confused, they get overwhelmed, right?
Any other questions?
So then he's with this soft-spoken NPR woman right after that exchange, right? And so this is him supposedly doing damage control. He's way too close to her, like inappropriately close. He's one of those people, he's a close talker. He gets too close to you. It's very uncomfortable, right? And there's people like me who want some distance, and then when somebody's, right next to you, talking to you, like, it's just overwhelming to have their big old fucking ghoul hole and face next to you, right?
But he still can't cooperate. Look, after he was elected, I was able to get almost $9 billion passed 2 weeks before he got sworn in January. You all told me it's impossible. Come on.
Look at how close he is.
Come on, give me a break here.
Give me a break here. Here. Ooh.
Donald Trump is the reason why you need someone who knows what they're doing. Donald Trump. Name me somebody who's going to be able to stand on the world stage and immediately command the respect of everyone in the world, our enemies as well as our adversaries, as well as our allies. I know all these people. This is the only reason why I'm running this time is because of my experience.
Well, Barack Obama was able to do it, and he didn't have very much experience at all.
No, that's not true. Think about it. That's not true. What happened was, one of the reasons Barack Obama picked me as vice president is because he lacked the background in foreign policy. He's a brilliant guy. He knew what...
Yeah, so there's that. But then he comes here.
...will be vice president of the United States.
So let's move forward here to this. This is where he gets angry. Right here.
And look, I'm in a situation where, look at my staff. I have the most diverse staff of anybody running. I've always done that. This is who the country has to look like, the administration should look like the American public.
I want to switch gears and ask you
Sure you
about
do.
what happened the other day.
Sure you do. Now, she's an NPR host, very liberal, not a Trumper. And he's got this fake laugh, right?
At your town hall, because you got a lot of attention for it. A man stood up and started throwing false allegations your way.
They weren't false. See, they weren't false. We now know all the shit about Hunter Biden, right? Convicted felon that he pardoned. He ended up pardoning his son. So they weren't false, right?
About your son Hunter Biden and his work in Ukraine and your work as vice president then in Ukraine. And you responded by...
So this is pre the laptop, right? Which we ended up realizing that they censored the laptop story on social media and other places before Biden was president and started to really censor social media. So this is, this is all played out. We know Hunter Biden's a piece of shit. We know the laptop came out. Then this is all, been confirmed. She's not asking as a real... This isn't a gotcha question because she's saying false accusations, which they weren't. The guy was not articulate, and he was old, and he couldn't. He had his own mental problems because there's two old guys who neither one can think, having an argument, right? They're both babbling because they both. He has Parkinson's, the other guy has whatever he has, right?
By calling him a damn liar, and then you challenged him to push-ups, and then you asked him for an IQ test.
No, he came along. He said he's entitled to do this. He said you're too old. He said you're too old. I can't vote for somebody as old as you. I said, okay. And he was challenging what kind of shape. So I kidded. I said, want to do a push-up contest?
You were angry. Like he's making it sound, we saw what happened there. He was angry. He wasn't like, hey, you want to do, hey buddy, hey pal, let's do a push-up. Like you're fucking, old as fuck, both of you guys, right?
I was joking. Look, I'm in pretty good
Which is
shape.
what Donald Trump says a lot. Hey, you can't take a joke. I was joking.
No.
But the point
Don't compare me to Donald Trump.
But people
Don't
did.
do
At
that.
the town hall, it
No,
was
they
just
didn't.
Yes, they did.
So look at how angry he is. He's lost it. Like he's not supposed to get angry. He got angry at the town hall, and when he compared him to Donald Trump, and they're very similar. They have very similar personality profiles, psychologically. They have different, beliefs supposedly, but they're very similar. They're very fucking similar. And he gets mad just like Trump gets mad if you compare him to Biden. But remember they were debating who was a better golfer, right? Years later. So think about all the things that happened since then. But this is what he gets angry. He sticks his finger in the face in a threatening way. Don't do this. We'll go back here.
And he was challenging what kind of shape. So I kidded. I said, want to do a push-up contest? I was joking. Look, I'm in pretty good
Which is
shape.
what Donald Trump says a lot. Hey, you can't take a joke. I was joking.
No.
But the point I
Don't
bring it up.
compare me to Donald Trump.
But people
Don't
did.
do
At
that.
the town hall, it was
No,
just
they
that.
didn't.
Yes, they did.
Well,
No, they didn't. He said, no, they didn't. Well, what? You talked to everybody there?
Said to me, the woman you met at the end, 94-year-old Mary, said to me, I was so disappointed in him. This is a direct quote. That is not the Joe I know. He sounded like Donald Trump in that clip.
Well, look, what Donald Trump says, he makes fun of people. He belittles people. He lies.
You just did that to the guy. He's gone, right? He's mentally gone. He's rearranging this event. He was belittling this guy, and he lies that he's lying about it. Like he's literally doing what Donald Trump does here. And again, he doesn't have a grasp of it. This is why they pulled him. They wouldn't let him campaign in 2020 because he was a disaster.
I don't do any of those things, period. The fact of the matter is this guy stood up and he was in fact lying. And I just pointed out, you're a liar. It's a fact. He lied. Period. And so, you know, maybe I shouldn't have kidded with him about that, you know, let's do push-ups. It's like I was out here in a parade, a 4th of July parade.
But I think people's point was in this time when you talk about needing to restore civility, it's so important to so many people.
That's not civil? To call someone who
Call
lied a
someone
liar?
a damn liar, a voter. This isn't
A voter. But
President
he's
Trump.
lying. He's lying. You acknowledge what he said wasn't even true. None of the mainstream media believes any of that was true.
I think it was the tone. I think it was the tone that was off-putting to people.
As my mother said, God love you, dear.
I have to ask you about...
That's so condescending. But see, this is what happens when you press somebody who's not mentally functioning. So this is 2019. Do you think this guy should be president? He's old as fuck. I mean, just look at him. And so this is, you know, the Parkinson's was already setting in. And the more campaigning he did, the more he fell apart. And there was just all these examples of it. He was just too far gone. And he doesn't get better. Like, it wasn't like he was going to get cured of Parkinson's. You know, dementia doesn't get better as you get older, right? And so they were setting up what I said was a nightmare. In some point of its presidency, there was 2 hand grenades. His senility, his Parkinson's, and Kamala Harris's unelectability, and they both went off in 2024, right? They both blew up in the middle of the election when everyone realized Kamala Harris was unlikable and that Joe Biden was senile and he had really Parkinson's, he had dementia. And so, you know, like this was not some new news for these guys at CNN. And then there's this other one here. Let's show you that one. Man, you are actually trying to end our Second Amendment right to take away our guns. He said, you're full of shit. I did not know. Shush, shush, shush. I support the Second Amendment. Just like the right now, if you yell fire, that's not. So he says, he shushes this person, who's his campaign person. So he shushes somebody. You know, this is him. He's failing under pressure, right? He's with all these factory workers, and some of them aren't into democratic policies because they're Republicans, and they're worried about the Second Amendment in this case. And he shushes somebody. Look, he says, you're full of shit, and shushes somebody. Let me go back to a little bit. A little bit more. My son's hunt. His sons are dead. He's got one son. He's got Hunter Biden, who has, you know, Hunter Biden ends up leaving a handgun with his dead brother's widow, and you know they're dating. He's banging his dead brother's widow. She's freaked out that Hunter Biden's going to kill himself. She takes his handgun, a loaded handgun, drops it in the trash. It ends up next to a high school, and some homeless guy takes it. The Secret Service got involved and had to track down the gun, right? And then he had another weapons charge that was unrelated to that. Like his son was not somebody who should have a gun. The other one was dead because Joe Biden wanted him to be, you know, the good one. Bo was supposed to be his successor. Bo was supposed to be like a candidate for, you know, Senate and maybe president someday. And they put him in the military so he gets some cred. But Joe Biden said all the toxic waste they were burning over there killed his son with brain cancer. So he doesn't have sons. He says, my son's son. No, you're one son. You have one son.
You're not allowed to own anyway. I'm not taking your gun away at all. You need 100 rounds and you and Vito I did not say that. That's not true. I did not say that.
Look at how angry he's getting. I did not say that. I did not say that. Sounds like the guy from The Room. I did not say that. I did not say them. Hi, Mark. Right? Okay, there's another. Let's find the other one about this. There's another angle for this. And there he ends up threatening the guy, said he wants to take the guy outside. So here's another angle. You're full of shit. He comes out straight out, says it. He says you're wait, it goes up here. Up here.
Video like the other one. ones you're putting out there, say they're lying.
Well, he just clarified it.
Wait. Take your AR-14s and look at it.
It says AR-14s. He doesn't know it's an AR-15. He says, "Don't try me, pal." So look at him, he's getting all like he's going to fight him with Secret Service all around him.
There's a lot of guys.
You're pushing. You're pushing up on me.
I'm not worried.
You're pushing up on me. Now he's getting in his face. He's like physically aggressive. This is supposed to be a campaign event, right? And his people, his handlers, know, oh my God, this guy's a nightmare. And they're already they've already pushed this guy. They have no way. They're like, who are we going to get instead of him? Beto O'Rourke, right? That guy was just slam Biden. You know, he's come out in my last video. I talked about that.
Are you able to I said, are you able to? That's right. AR-15s are legal. How is that a machine gun? No, it's not. Yeah,
so he doesn't know AR-15s are semi-automatic, and they're not illegal. And he says, I'm going to take your AR-15s. The guy says it's not okay. And he's just telling him, Joe Biden's schooling him on this thing. Joe Biden should know he's pushing to take these things away, that it's not a machine gun, it's semi-automatic.
You need 100 rounds? You need 100 rounds? In America with handguns that are what you call assault rifles. Why are you advocating for assault rifles when people are dying by handguns? Okay, let's...
There's some point he said you want to step outside. I don't know if it's... Oh, maybe it's back here. I don't know if it said here.
Anyway, I'm not taking that gun away at all. You need 100 rounds? No. I did not say that. That's not true. I did not say that. It's a viral video like the other ones you're putting out there. Say they're lying.
Well, he just clarified it.
Wait.
Anyways, maybe that was a different video, but like he's getting physically aggressive. He's getting intimidated. He's getting close to the guys. He's bowing up on him, right? And that's all because his mental decline. And they knew this. They couldn't let this guy campaign. This was all in a short period of time. He wasn't even doing that many events. They were already handling him. And he still couldn't fucking do it. I found it here on Stephen Colbert. But it's much better audio, right? But I can't use the whole clip because CBS sucks at copywriting. But here he says this to him. I'll just turn the volume down here.
Not okay. Hold on, all right? Hey, let's There's a lot of...
I'll go out and I'll slap you in the face. Don't tell me that, pal, or I'm going to go out and slap you in the face. Stephen Colbert, who is a Joe Biden shill, and they're actually trying to pump Joe Biden up like he's, a little bit in this clip. It starts off where he does a bit of, like they show Bernie Sanders, Trump, and Joe Biden all in like carts because they're too old to walk. Like they're already talking about this being some geriatric runoff. But he says he's going to slap him in the face. And so, they edited those things out at different places. Like I can't even find this whole clip. You can see this is the best audio. But this is why his campaign's like, we can't run this guy and take you outside and slap you in the face, right? Like he's saying that because the guy just asked him about, a gun grabbing, which is every Democrat knows that that's a possibility, that you're going to be asked those questions. Like every Democrat knows they have to, that people are going to talk to them about gun control because the NRA is very powerful and there's a lot of people who don't want gun grabbing. It's a big thing with Americans, as everybody knows. And every Democrat tries to show that they own guns. He's already said that he's a hunter and that him and his sons, his dead son and his other son, the crackhead, are hunters. One of them's named Hunter, and he owns a shotgun and another, whatever else gun he owns, right? And you see these guys, Bill Clinton firing guns, like they all want to show you they own guns, like every Democrat does. So it's a thing they know it's going to happen. You're going into a factory in Michigan. There's going to be some Second Amendment people there. They might ask you questions, Joe. Don't threaten to slap them in the fucking face and take them outside and slap them in the face. Okay, please don't do that because that's counterproductive here.
AR-14s.
Okay, this is not okay. Hold on, all right? Hey, let's
There's
a lot of guys.
Boom. And so that's, Fuck, right? So this is the killer. This is from 10 years ago. This is 2015. It's 4 years before he ran in 2020, 2019, 5 years before the election in 2020. And so, this this is a CNN report called Biden's presidential candidacy questioned after gaffes.
Vice President Biden in the key primary state of New Hampshire today.
Much of the country's future will depend on the policies we choose in the next 2, 4, 6 years.
After recent travels to the early contest states of Iowa and South Carolina. But Biden's latest gaffes are stealing the spotlight away from speculation about his presidential aspirations.
So this is Breanna Keeler. She is currently working at CNN. Jake Tapper's one of his co-workers. And CNN is told to do a hit piece on Joe Biden. So they knew this guy wasn't up to be running for president in 2015, 16, right? This is right before the campaign's going to start. They've handpicked Hillary Clinton. She has, she's the Barack Obama's Secretary of State, and Biden's his vice president. And so they both have name recognition and some backing, and they're both potential presidential candidates. But Obama is picking Hillary, and she's going to pass out. She's already passed out 5 or 6 times, and she's going to pass out, remember, a couple of times on the campaign trail. She is likely an alcoholic. People said she had kuru because she was a cannibal, but I think she was an alcoholic. She was always drinking. There's multiple events you can see her drinking, doing shots. I mean, like heavy drinking. And she likes her alcohol. She played a bartender on Saturday Night Live. It's like she's into booze, possibly an alcoholic, but she passed out a number of times. Passed out, broke her arm. Like they had to carry her to her car. And so they picked her over Biden. Why did they pick somebody who's physically breaking down over somebody who's, older, a little bit older than she is, and Biden, who's going to, was a gaffe magnet and a nightmare. And CNN is making sure that he doesn't run. Like CNN, the same way they shilled for him in 2020 and ignored all his bullshit, they're calling him on it here.
For their trust.
Like his strange hold on Defense Secretary Ash Carter's wife, Stephanie, and this claim about Somali immigrants in his hometown of Wilmington, Delaware.
So a groper. First, he's a groper.
It's a large, very identifiable Somali community. There's an awful lot of driving cabs, and are friends of mine, for real. I'm not being solicitous. I'm being serious.
And it turns out factually incorrect. Only 15 Somalis live in the entire state, according to the Census Bureau. And Wilmington cab drivers told CNN they knew of no Somalis driving taxis.
So he's a liar. He's a lying piece of shit. He just makes up stories, just like a plagiarizer, which he was before. But also, CNN's fact-checking him. Did they fact-check him in 2020 and call him on his bullshit? No. They supported this guy when everyone knew that he wasn't up to it mentally, right? Again, 10 years ago.
No one is asked to respond to every time Joe Biden says something, and he says something every day that people should be responding to.
Marco Rubio, who is considering a run for president, and other Republicans are incensed. And on late-night TV, Biden has become a punchline.
Ever heard of a second lady?
Okay, so let's go back here a second because I want to hear this part. But on the Daily Show, they had the audacity of grope, which was a knock. Was a joke of Obama's audacity of hope. And they did a whole hit piece on him groping women, right? Which we only see a part of it from the mainstream media. But I went back to the 2015 and 2016 swearing-in ceremonies, and I made a 2-hour video. I don't know where it is now. I mean, I have it like on some kind of a, external hard drive. But I mean, I would put it in here, but who cares? But he was just groping and mauling all these young women, right? And so. Now he's a groper. So what do they get him at, right? In the beginning, he's a groper. Then they tell him he's a liar, and they're fact-checking him. And now they're talking about his gaffes, and then also his groping again.
The missteps are nothing new. Over the years, Biden's become known for them.
Inappropriate.
He's taken criticism for some, like this one, talking to a largely African-American audience about Mitt Romney in 2012.
They're going to put you all back in chains.
Racially inappropriate.
But often his handsiness and comments
No dates to 30.
are likened to those of a crazy but lovable uncle.
Crazy. Is he crazy or is he senile? Is he, like, he's just a little bit old. He's got a dementia.
As they veer toward the more bizarre variety, it's raising questions about appropriate behavior for someone eyeing the White House. And with Biden a distant second to Hillary Clinton in polls of Democratic hopefuls, suggestions that Biden isn't a serious contender. Judging by his joke last night at a Black History Month event, maybe even Biden realizes that.
Maybe even maybe the senile fuck with Parkinson's even realizes it. Everyone else realizes he's not a serious candidate. But maybe even Joe, I mean, we don't know because the guy's fucked in the head. Maybe this fucking guy realizes it, right? Maybe even Joe.
Last night at a Black History Month event, maybe even Biden realizes that.
I'm going to be in that room if anybody wants a photograph. I would not blame you if you didn't.
That was just one of his goofy jokes. It wasn't because he's saying I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. Like he's just trying to be self-deprecating and he's so narcissistic. And so CNN knew. Like everyone knows. They all fucking know, right? It's not like they don't know, right? They all fucking know. And so that's Jojo Magoo. I mean, he was just a mess. And CNN, let's go back to this thing with Jake Tapper. But him saying, that this guy had access to it, this district attorney, had access to Joe Biden and saw him for long periods of time and saw Joe Biden break down the way he would break down with his staff and his handlers. You didn't need that. You didn't need it now. Like, you guys are late to the party. It's 2025. You guys, 10 years ago, you had this guy pegged. And now you're saying, well, we didn't know. I mean, he just got dementia in 2024. No, fuck you. How are we going to know? Like, you're reporters, for Christ's sakes. You were told not to pay attention to this thing until it got so fucking bad he's melting down in debates. And George Clooney's telling him, is writing op-eds about him because he doesn't know who George Clooney is. After George Clooney raised a record amount of money for him, some Hollywood shindig, and the guy was falling apart because he just came from some summit, and they couldn't put him back together again. But the guy is, he was senile in 2015, and, he was showing signs of his Parkinson's was setting in. And then by 2019, he was even more unelectable, and they ignored it. And then they hit him in 2020 with COVID, and, And so let's get back to it here. They have the gall to say, they're like, Jake Tapper's pretending he's like breaking a story. Like we talked about in this truth community 5 years before you guys even thought to mention it, right?
So that's what the part that I was talking about. He's not clear of dates. He's not clear on when Bo died, when Donald Trump won the presidency, when he lived in Virginia. And this is what Robert Hur heard, and why it was so significant is so few people were able to have access to President Biden like this for hours at a time when he was showing this less than optimally functioning Joe Biden.
Okay, so I'm not showing you all the things. I mean, there's so many clips I have. I mean, those are old clips, and then I have the ones from his presidency. And there's so many gaffes and things people sent me. I didn't even get to cover all the things people sent me. Right? I mean, there's probably 50 videos that include the crazy stuff that Joe Biden said or did. And, all of it. So, it's all there. And he's making it sound like there isn't a mountain of evidence that this guy was fucked in the head. I mean, even before he got Parkinson's, he was not electable. He really wasn't a president. He ran for president 3 times, and the American people said no to the Democrats. And the Democrats said no. Like, he never made it as a candidate. He was never a serious candidate. He never polled in double digits. No one thought he should be president. And then all of a sudden they rolled him out, maybe because they knew he'd be the ultimate puppet. Who knows what their motivation was? And everybody went along with it. And now they're pretending that they had, only that guy was with him for so long. That's, we saw it. Every time Joe Biden opened his fucking mouth, there's so many people were covering his dementia, right? This wasn't, for them to come out and say all these things. So there's this guy who counted Donald Trump's lies and gumballs. I call him the gumball guy. He's one of my favorite CNN people. He now has his own show. And then Saturday I taped this. This is Jake. He has Jake Tapper back on. He's going to show you the same clips, and I want to go through the clips. And then at the end of this, I'll put in that piece I did before a couple days ago about the MSNBC video about him having Parkinson's. And then I'll save, a portion of this video as the end of this video as, just like a compilation. But I only am scratching the surface. You can go and search any of Joe Biden's moments where he's senior moments and compilations, and you'll find, hundreds of clips of it. Every time he went out, he did something that questioned his senility, his mental capabilities to be president.
About the state of former President Joe Biden's physical and mental capabilities during his time in office. Friday, Axios published audio of then President Biden's interview with former special counsel Robert Hur. All of this was surrounding the now closed probe over Biden's handling of classified documents. This interview happened in October of 2023. Transcripts of those discussions were made public last year, but these are the first audio recordings of the interview to be made public. One portion of the interview here, Biden has trouble recalling dates, including when President Trump was elected. Watch this.
And Trump gets elected in November of 2017, 2016. All right. So, 2017 here.
That's when you left office, in January.
Yeah, okay. But that's when Trump gets sworn in.
Right, correct.
Okay, yeah.
So, he's being helped like a person who doesn't have a good mind. Like you'd help your grandfather remember events, right? He has this all the time, people around him. I don't know if that's his lawyer or it's this guy, Robert Hur. And the guy's like, "What? Why do I have 2017 written down here? Why don't get it? What?" And so he doesn't have a time frame for any of these dates. So he can't answer questions of what he did with these classified documents because he's fucking brain dead, right? He's got Parkinson's. He doesn't know what the fuck he's doing.
Jake Tapper has more for us.
What we hear from these excerpts of the Hur Report interview in October 8th and October 9th, 2023, is a President Biden who is not functioning the way one would want and expect a President of the United States to be able to function. He's having difficulty with dates. He loses his train of thought quite a bit. You might remember also that President Biden asserted executive privilege to block these audio tapes from coming out even after the transcripts have been released. The transcripts released right before Robert Hur testified before Congress were buried in a lot of the coverage of Hur's testimony, where he was attacked by Democrats for his apparently offensive characterization of President Biden as somebody who he was not going to prosecute for mishandling documents because Robert Hur said he would come across to a jury as a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory, when of course that is, if anything, a charitable version of how Biden comes across.
So he's saying the Democrats attacked Joe Biden, but you guys attacked all of us when we said Joe Biden was senile, right? So when I said 2019, we were censored and all these things, and mainstream media, no, he's not, and you had all these people, oh, but he's a whiz in the office, behind the scenes and meetings and all this bullshit. I mean, they did it, a year ago, 2024 in January. There was a poll out, and 70% of Americans said he was unfit mentally. People like Stephen A. Smith and dopes like that started to jump on the bandwagon and say Joe Biden is mentally unfit, right? But it was, we were doing this way beforehand. I could see it. Like, you could see it years and years ago. He was breaking down mentally, and these guys all knew it. And to say that, you guys all gaslit the rest of us to pretending this guy wasn't fucking mentally impaired. I used to say, would you have this guy drive your school bus, or would you want this guy driving? They showed him with his Corvette. He had this big fancy Corvette, and some old redone, refurbished Corvette. And I was like, you can't allow this guy to drive. He doesn't have the capacity. he's not mentally functioning. And everyone knew it. Like, everybody fucking knew it.
In these tapes, we also have to remember that this is the period of time when his close aides and family members start really sequestering him off from even members of his own cabinet, administration, Democratic officials, donors, because of these moments of non-functioning Biden that are happening with an increased frequency. I want to throw to another clip. This one is a clip of when Robert Hur, who is investigating mishandling of documents by President Biden, then former Vice President Biden in 2017, 2018, wants to ask him about this period where he moves from the vice president's residence to a house on Chainbridge Road in Virginia. And that is where the conversation begins. Let's roll that clip.
I don't know. This is what, 2017, 18, that area?
Yes, sir.
Remember, in this time frame, my son is either been deployed or is dying.
So he gets those dates drastically wrong, but he's being manipulative here, right? You know, he's saying, you know, my son, my tragic son, he was died. I don't know what I was doing back then. I imagine what it was like for me that my son was deployed and he died during that period, which is neither one of those things is true. He had died in 2015 and he was deployed in 2008, which Jake Tapper will talk about here. So it wasn't even close to the dates, right? These are towards the end of his vice presidency. And he can't remember what he's done with any. He doesn't have a time frame for any of these things. Like, his mind's gone. But he's being manipulative. You know, my son, remember my heroic son who deployed to Afghanistan and, you know, thank you for your service. And then he died of brain cancer because of the, you know, the stuff that I can't prove, the toxic smoke that he inhaled there. And, you know, even though he pushed his son out there. Remember, Hunter Biden was pissed because Hunter Biden had to go out and do scumbag shit with scumbags to get money to support Joe Biden's candidacy, and his brother, he had to pay his brother's college bills, his tuition, right? Like, he had to go out and make money doing scumbag stuff while Joe Biden and his brother remained squeaky clean. But then his brother Bo dies, and then Hunter Biden's the little guy left holding the bag with all these things, right? The money laundering stuff and the rest of it. But, you know, he's being manipulative here, right? I mean, let's bring my son into it, my dead son, my heroic said dead son into this. You know, like, this guy's asking him questions about him breaking the law, doing, you know, committing a felony. And he's bringing up, you know, he's misremembering the dates. He doesn't have a clue of what was 2017, right? What's going on there? Why do I have 2017 written down here? You know, my son, my dead son, you know, remember that was going on at that time. You know, my son was either deploying or getting killed or dying. I don't know, one of those things. Well, 2008 and 2015 is a 7-year gap. Like, he didn't deploy and die at the same time. And it wasn't in 2017.
My son is either been deployed or is dying. And so it was, and by the way, there were still a lot of people at the time when I got out of the Senate that were encouraging me to run in this period.
Okay, so he's talking about 2017 where he's just finished his 8 years as Barack Obama's vice president, right? So he's asked about 2017, and maybe he thinks 2007, but he thinks he's still in the Senate. And he's thinking that he went from the Senate to running for president against Trump. Well, I just got out of the Senate. It's really the vice presidency. And I just got out of the Senate, and people were encouraging me to run for president. No, they weren't. Your wife, a few other people, some handlers. Nobody wanted you to run in 2015. They fucking did a hit piece on you to get you not to run. Like, it's so fucked up, right? He's so clueless. And, you know, it's not like this is news. We knew this fucking years ago. I mean, it got worse over time, sure. But it was, you know, was always there.
And so it was, and by the way, there were still a lot of people at the time when I got out of the Senate that were encouraging me
to run in this period.
So what you heard there is Robert Hur just trying to talk about the investigative matter at hand, which is when Joe Biden shared these classified documents with others. But Vice President Biden is unable to figure out when this time period is. 2017 to 2018, he says, you have to remember that's when my son Beau was either deployed or dying. Now, Beau's death is obviously tragic, but that happened in 2015, not 2017, 2018. And Beau deployed in 2008, 2009. So he really doesn't have a grasp on dates, even dates surrounding one of the most important, significant, and traumatizing events of his life, the death of his son Beau in May 2015. And you might remember later on when the Hur report comes out, and Robert Hur explains to the world that while he thinks President Biden mishandled classified information, he isn't going to prosecute him because he would come across as a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. President Biden blames Robert Hur for bringing up Beau's death. Robert Hur, as you heard, did not bring up Beau's death. And yet the Democratic establishment, led by President Biden, also Vice President Kamala Harris and others, went after Robert Hur for that false assertion, but also for characterizing President Biden in a way that, frankly, seems rather charitable.
So this district attorney, Hur, released the transcripts, and, he said that he wasn't going to prosecute this guy, which you've already heard over and over again here. And Joe Biden and his team go off. He says he's not going to prosecute it because he's a doty old dude. He's not going to get a conviction. He's sympathetic. He's a sympathetic, senile fuck, right? And, this was when they were already, he's fallen off of his bike and he's walking upstairs. They have to make the stairs shorter than him because of his Parkinson's gait, the way that he walked. And I showed you the Parkinson's guy, by a couple of videos ago. Maybe I'll find that clip and put it at the end. I'll put it at the end of this whole thing. For my, my previous video on this. But, the guy's falling apart, right? And, the Biden administration goes off, and then he lies about the stuff to do with his son here.
There's even reference that I don't remember when my son died. How in the hell dare he raise that?
How dare he? Like, he's not the one who raised it. You did. And, you saw it. He didn't know. And he was, he's conflating not only his son dying, but when he enlisted, he was using it as an emotionally manipulative tool, which I said earlier. And so, he's been being manipulative and being a piece of shit about it. And then he comes out and he's like, oh, how dare they?
When my son died. How in the hell dare he raise that? Frankly, when I was asked the question, I thought to myself, wasn't any of their damn business.
He didn't ask about his son dying. So he doesn't even remember the conversation, right? It's none of their damn business. You're the one who brought up your son to manipulate the interviewer in some greasy way, and you didn't know any of the dates, right? Like, you're gone. And they're like, oh, they needed this guy to tell. Well, we saw it. We all saw it. Okay, so this just popped up on my phone. It's actually from a week ago. But I want to add something here.
Jake Tapper here. Alex Thompson from Axios and I wrote a book. It's coming out next Tuesday. It's called Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again. The book...
His disastrous choice to run again, it isn't his choice. So somebody who is that far gone mentally, who has dementia, you see him all the time trying to rearrange reality. Like going back to that debate with Kamala Harris and when Cory Booker was holding his feet to the fire about him being a part of the whole, marijuana thing. And Joe Biden said that he had all this support amongst the black community, including the first African-American, the only African-American senator. And then when Cory Booker and Kamala Harris are laughing at him, he goes, I said the first. No, you didn't, Joe. But he believes he said the first because he's like, part of that's being a liar, but mostly that's being him not, he got all confused looking, he did all that shit. And so, you saw this over and over with him where he would make mistakes and he would just, and I don't think he was lying. Not that he doesn't lie, he lied quite a bit, but he doesn't understand, he doesn't comprehend. And so somebody who can't comprehend isn't aware of their mental decline. Like he was always saying how sharp he was. I mean, I think he thought, how hurt he was when they ditched him, that he screwed the Democratic Party for Kamala. I mean, he really felt like they betrayed him. And he kept on saying over and over again, but look at all that we've accomplished. Instead of saying, oh, I'll take a cognitive test. Because, he thought that he didn't need to take a cognitive test, right? So you can't say it was his idea to run again, that he knew he was senile, but he was going to run anyway, right? It's like this goofiness these guys are trying to, blame him and certainly some of his supporters in the Democratic Party, but mostly him, and it wasn't his fault. He's a person with Alzheimer is never culpable for their bad decisions.
The book is drawn from more than 200 interviews with mostly Democratic insiders, almost all of them after the election. And one of the things we were shocked to learn, the White House physician, Dr. Kevin O'Connor, talked about how if Biden had one more fall, he might actually need to be in a wheelchair. But this was...
So that speaks to the Parkinson's part. That, again, it was his gait. He walked strangely. This is a neurological issue that doesn't have to do with dementia. Alzheimer's people, they don't have this kind of walk, right? It's a hallmark of the, and again, you'll see this in this guy, this doctor, but we all saw how he walked very stiffly and it was getting worse. And that walk itself, I used to joke about calling this Thorazine shuffle. My ex-girlfriend, who was a nurse, worked at a psych hospital, and they would, put these patients on Thorazine and they would walk like that, would fuck around with their, their neurological, their ability to like walk in a normal fashion. And so, the guy is obviously, this didn't happen overnight. Like he was great in 2023 or 22, somewhere between 22 and 23, he fell off a cliff. No, like we all saw this early on.
It was all put off until after the election. They did not want images of Biden in a wheelchair out there. You might recall that Biden started to have problems with a shuffling gait that the administration was very sensitive about. There was a time when they started having people walk with him to Marine One. Those people were there to kind of like hide the fact that his gait was as bad as it was, and also have them there in case he stumbled.
Yeah, and the gait was because of Parkinson's.
The White House would say that this gait issue was because Biden had fallen after the election of 2020, but the truth is that it didn't have to do with that. Dr. O'Connor's medical report said that injury was completely healed. This had to do with other degenerative problems.
Yeah, Parkinson's. As you say, Parkinson's in the book, which would mean that, he didn't get Parkinson's in 2020. He got Parkinson's, years ago. It takes a while for it to degenerate. He got it when he was vice president. And so, for a number of years. Like he has later stage Parkinson's, according to this doctor coming out. Let's get into that here. Okay, so this is a monster video. It has 1.4 million views for MSNBC. They don't average, hundreds of thousands of views is a big video. Oh, anything over 100,000 views is a big video for these clowns over there, CNN and MSNBC. This one has 1.4 million. So 1.4 million saw this, and nobody talks about it. Like no one else talks about this, right?
To talk more about those 8 White House visits by the Parkinson's expert, I'm joined tonight by Dr. Tom Pitts. He's a quadruple board-certified neurologist. He sees...
Oh, yeah, they had 8 visits by a Parkinson's expert. So a Parkinson's expert came to check out Joe Biden 8 times, right? And they dismissed it by saying the guy was just a neurologist and it was just neurology stuff. But this guy, here, let me just...
Patients with Parkinson's all the time. He diagnoses it. I want to be completely transparent here. You've never examined President Biden. From my knowledge, you've never even spoken yet to President Biden.
Been in the
yeah,
room.
And we're just going to use what we have so far, which is what we've seen, the president's interviews, and the information coming out of the White House. Sure. So my first question to you is, as somebody who's a neurologist, what you've seen from the president over the last 2 years, what you saw at the debate, the last few interviews, the way he speaks, the way maybe he walks. Have you noticed anything that gives you a red flag as a doctor?
Oh, yeah, I see him 20 times a day in clinic. I mean, it's ironic because he has just such classic features of neurodegeneration. I mean, word finding difficulties, and that's not, oh, I couldn't find the word. That's from degeneration of the word retrieval area.
He's also overcome stuttering, though. Could that be part
Jesus Christ. This guy's the worst interviewer.
that too?
No, this is not a palatal issue or a speech discrepancy, which is very different from a lemino dysfunction, actual word retrieval, where you pick a similar question or talk around the issue, plus the rigidity, monotone voice.
Wait, go back to that, the rigidity. What do you mean?
Rigidity, loss of arm swing, standing up lordically. You notice when he turns, it's kind of end block turning. It's not a quick turn. That's one of the hallmarks.
See, they have all these terms, right? Let's go back to who's going to say this.
That's one of the hallmarks of Parkinsonism is rigidity and bradykinesia, slow movement. And he has that hallmark, especially with the low voice that said was a cold, hypophonia, a small monotone voice like this over time is a hallmark of Parkinsonism. I could have diagnosed him from across the mall.
Here are some of the...
So, clearly has Parkinson's, right? Based in this expert. They brought a Parkinson's guy in to examine him. And, when you work with these things, like whatever you do for a job, like there are things that I can recognize when I look at my Premiere Pro app. I can, like, there's these, there's the audio track has these lines, these things where it shows they'll show you how, like, there'll be some times I'll be speaking with more volume, right? And that'll be a burst of volume. And you can see it, right, when you look at it. And I can look at it and see where I might cough, where I might laugh. Like, you just get used to seeing the patterns. I have dyslexia, and, that's a whole thing, But in general, you just, you get better at things. And you recognize things, right? When you work in an expert as a field in the medical community, I worked for years in treatment centers. And, you work with a certain type of people. You're married to somebody with certain kind of conditions. You have people in your life who have conditions, and you kind of become an expert on that thing, right? Time and experience and effort makes you just know things better than someone who is just looking at it from the outside. And somebody who works with Parkinson's would just know. And this guy does. And the stuff that he's saying, everything that he's saying, there's terms for it, right? There they have all these words, the various things, the symptom diagnoses, and Biden has all of these things, right?
The symptoms from Parkinson's. We just had him up there on the screen. If we can put him back. What about the movement? Some people have pointed out the way he walks. Sometimes it's not very fast, small steps. Is that something that is common in people who are battling a disease like Parkinson's?
Yeah, it's a hallmark. Shuffling gait, we call that, so little steps. Loss of arm swing from the rigidity. When we walk, we have a nice cadence. You notice he doesn't really swing his arms. And end block turning, meaning he kind of pivots around his foot. If you said, hey, President Biden, he wouldn't go like this. But I also know, and tell me if I'm wrong here, it's very hard to diagnose Parkinson's, isn't it? It's not simple. I mean, I've heard that it can be. It's one of the easier movement disorders to diagnose, actually. Right, but it's so clinic. There's very little other. And I'm a Democrat. I always say about this.
This is a great part. 'Cause this guy's trying to throw shade on it, right? Isn't it hard to diagnose Parkinson's? When you can diagnose somebody by looking at him. There's other things you have to take tests for. There's psychological conditions you need. Psychological testing and some limited interaction, right? But like if you could just look at somebody based in their movements and see, he says he sees this 100 times a day in his clinic. He works with Parkinson's people that do the exact same shit that Biden's doing.
Right. It's just like, this guy is not a hard case.
But I've had relatives who have gone through neurological issues, and I've heard that sometimes Parkinson's is not very easy to nail. You have to take a lot of tests.
It's early on if you're just presented with like hallucinations. That could be a variety of things, or just the cognitive problems. That could be Alzheimer's versus Parkinsonism, and that becomes a little nebulous. But once you start manifesting the hallmark motor symptoms, right? Slow movement, rigidity, mass facies, hypophonia. I mean, if a med student did not pick Parkinson's on the test, they'd be remediated.
So let me ask you,
So they said if a med student looked at Joe Biden and didn't pick Parkinson's for this, they would be like, yeah, you're not suited to be a doctor. Like it's...
and I know you can't you have no idea what happened in the White House, but a neurologist coming 8 times in 8 months, does that tell you anything? Is that, I mean, I know you're just sort of speculating here, but does that tell you anything?
He's not speculating.
No.
Well, I mean, I don't know if they're like the best of friends or something, but that's a very specific, he's a movement disorder. That's a subspecialist in exactly what he has. And there's very few young people, like a Marine Guard. Most people would be med boarded out.
Oh, remember they said a Marine Guard, the guy came in to see a Marine Guard, one of his guards that might have Parkinson's, that is guarding President Biden with a movement disorder, right?
Any type of movement disorder at a young age. Like if you had Huntington's chorea, early onset Parkinson's, dystonia, bad essential tremor, you're usually med boarded out. So I highly doubt there's...
What does that mean, med boarded out?
Med boarded, meaning the military would not let you, if you have seizures, for example, you cannot usually be in the military. That is, you are
so
medical
you're saying you don't necessarily believe, and they're not saying this, but they said there's thousands of military members that go to the White House that are treated there for health reasons.
Yeah.
You're not buying that that's a random military person.
No, that would be very odd to just see a random movement disorder case at the White House, especially a young guard. There aren't many young people that have movement disorders that could be in the military.
And then, a lot of people have called...
I mean, just silly. Then they're using a military person here. It's like, oh, you don't insult the troops. Like, it's like one of those, it's so manipulative.
For a cognitive test. What exactly would that entail? What does that mean?
Now, that's the key, because word finding retrieval doesn't necessarily mean you don't know what you want to say. What I cannot comment on is his ability to make good decisions. His motor symptoms are degenerating. He has Parkinsonisms. That is a fact. He has degeneration of the brain. Show me the MRI. Show me he doesn't. Put your money where your mouth is. He definitely has it. But the problem is, when you look at his situation, you can't say, oh, I know for a fact that because he didn't retrieve the word, he didn't know what he wanted to say. And that's why both him and Trump should take the 4-hour neuropsychological testing, which is the hallmark test for cognitive performance.
What do you do in this test?
A lot of things. So, for example, they may have you say...
Okay, so he goes into how Trump takes these little fake tests, and they have these 4-hour tests, right? Which all these guys should take. Like all these people over a certain age, or if you're showing signs, certainly Fetterman, these other people. I mean, they all should probably just take it, just to make it non-discriminatory. And it's just, you're making big decisions. And you also want to make sure you're not being run by your handlers. Like, that's the big thing, right? So Joe Biden was clearly not president. And we know from that other guy, the Johnson, whatever his name is, Bob Johnson, Howard Johnson, I don't know. The guy who's in charge of the House of Representatives. He met with Biden, and Biden's people were all there, Kamala Harris and the various Chuck Schumer and his various cabinet members. And the guy knew that it was a setup, right? And so the guy wanted to talk to Biden about a specific thing that he passed. It was going to be hard for his state, Louisiana, I believe he's from. And Biden was like, yeah, I didn't pass a bill. This is what the bill said. And it was not what the bill actually said. And the guy said, no, this is what the bill actually said. And Biden was arguing with him. Biden didn't know what he signed. And this was like, a year ago. I mean, a year before the whole thing. This guy just got elected when they took over the House. And Biden had to meet with him. And so, we know that Biden wasn't doing his job because he had handlers. And the same thing with Mitch McConnell, same thing with Fetterman. When somebody is not cognitively able to do their job. And Trump being lied to. I mean, Trump is being isolated, and he only watches Fox News. And, he's got a team of people, and he's not being told all the information. Like, a lot of times, these guys don't know what we know. They know less than we know because they're being isolated, and they're mentally fucked in the head, right? And so this shows you politics is an absolute fucking joke. And this is across the board. Trump taking this plane at the same time as this book coming out. I've talked about this. I knew this 10 years ago. I knew this when I was a little kid, but it's gotten way worse since then. It's all political theater. It's so degraded. And it is just, an absolute, it's an absolute mess, right? Okay, so let me wrap the video up here. So I'm also going to turn this into a long compilation that, I don't know how much I'll use this ever again, but I have a reference point now. I have all these things. You know how many times I've watched some of these video clips like the Cory Booker thing, or, I mean, so many times I've had to go back and find these clips, and they're all in one place now, and I could just slap the whole video in there. But this isn't all I know, and I don't know probably, 1% of the public times Joe Biden has done something that would indicate that he has cognitive issues, right? And there's a lot of things that this isn't, most of the stuff I showed you here were things that happened before he was president, and then a few of these things afterwards. But there's just all these things that falling down on the bike, the things that, you guys have all seen over and over again. And it was fairly obvious. And so what Jake Tapper is trying to do here in the CNN is, make themselves look like they are truth tellers. And they're the only ones who are willing to say Joe Biden was senile and the Democratic Party fucked us and themselves. This is the issue. It wasn't a problem that existed in 2024 when they had to ditch Biden and go with Kamala. It was a grenade they gave to the Democratic Party in 2019 or 20 when Joe Biden became the nominee and he picked Kamala Harris to be his vice president, basically screwing them for 2024. And they proceeded to do, have these policies that were going to lead to hyperinflation, and they did a lot of looting and a lot of shit that, would go south. And I think it was planned all along for Trump to win. And so, the Democratic Party was fucked. The only thing they got going for him is Trump's a complete idiot, or whatever he is. That'd be generous to say he was an idiot. That would be the best case scenario for him and his followers. But it's more likely he's just completely handled and doing the bidding of his controller. So, in all that, you have a media and, two political parties and everybody else that was involved that was complicit. And, George Clooney coming out and say, Joe Biden isn't the same man was back in 2008 or whatever it is. He isn't the same man now as he used to be. Well, he wasn't the same man in 2020. You guys all saw that he was declining, but you decided to push him through anyway, which is just fucking stupid and short-sighted. And we don't know what really went into all that. Whether this is just, they're all handled and they didn't have a choice when you back him. But now you can't try to claim street cred and go after him when you're fucking 5 or 6 years too late, right? You were out in front of the curve in 2015, CNN was, but then they, completely caved on all the things they knew about him. And even if you take away the senility, he was never really presidential. Not in terms of, all these guys suck, and he sucked worse. He just was a boob. When he got caught plagiarizing the first time he ran for president, you think he would have given up, or they would have just said, all right, yeah, we'll get rid of this guy. And then the second and third time he ran for president, but by the time Barack Obama made him vice president, everyone knew the guy was a fucking boob. And then he was a boob that was getting older. And so, whatever reason they nominated him could be the same reason that Obama nominated Kamala Harris, because of demographics and other things. But at the end of the day, they all sucked and we were right. And they never come around and say, oh my God, you guys, said the obvious back when it was obvious, but none of us would say it. That Joe Biden had mental issues, obviously related to Parkinson's or whatever it might be. Anyways, let me wrap this one up here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.